Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Rational Male Ask Anything. This is the third time I have done this. I'm going to be doing this a little bit more regularly, I hope. Hello, everybody in the chat. I am monitoring the chat. I'm doing this solo once a month right now. I'm probably going to step this up to 2 times a month. If anybody is having trouble hearing me or your video's a little whack, just let me know. This is just going to be, I'm just going to run this like I did the last time. If anybody has any questions, you feel free to put them in the chat. I will give super chats priority, of course, but you don't have to do a super chat. I will peruse this. I've got, let's see, I have, who's in the house right now? I've got Sam Bada is helping me out with the mod. I think maybe Jonathan will help me out later on too. So, oh, and then probably Conk will show up as well. So thank you guys in advance for running blocker on my chat here, which is always ugly. Anyways, so I just want to start off with a few things here. Thanks for that $1, Kenneth. I was made aware of this video, and I try not to be like, just to jump on whatever's the new hotness, I guess. But this one kind of, I can see that we're probably going to talk about this sooner or later. Maybe even Pat and I will discuss this maybe on his show on Friday, or possibly we'll do another coverage of this on our show on Sundays. Again, if you have questions, that's you can start throwing them at me. But I want to start with this. I'm going to see if I can do this like I did the last time here. I don't even know who this guy is. I know he's a comedian, and I know that the chick that he's talking to here is his wife. And so this is the exchange. I'm just gonna throw this up real quick. And let's see. Oops, I got to do this first. Hang on. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we're going to go with this one. And I am going, oh, that's right. I got to put that there. Okay. And I always have to monkey around with audio for this, so please forgive me for a second here. I'm going to push the mic over to the speakers. There we go.
Last 5 days have been fucking traumatic.
Yeah.
You haven't been there for any of it, unfortunately.
I was there making money for the family.
You throw money at my tears, which is okay.
You know what? Okay, when you say that, it hurts my feelings.
Why?
Because what if we were poor? It would be more difficult.
If we were poor, Papa, we would be divorced because there's no way you know how to show me love.
What?
Because you throw money at my tears, and if we were poor, what would you throw at my tears?
Love.
Okay, anyways, let's
what was that?
I love you. I love you,
Okay, I love you too.
Okay, my final word on this. I usually don't like to talk shit about doctors and their establishment, but treat this as a Yelp review, right? We're all allowed to give our Yelp reviews. Dr. David Kim in Beverly Hills, worst bedside manners out of any fucking doctor.
Out of 5 stars.
He makes great tits, but if anything goes wrong, 0 fucking stars.
All right, that's enough of that. Hang on one second here. Just wanted to play that for you guys so you get an idea what we're talking about here. I don't know, we're at a point right now where I'm not really sure whether this is like legit or not. I realize the guy's a comedian, and I think he's in some way a team with his wife. So it could be that they just set this up, but I don't know. It kind of looked a little bit legit to me. So, yeah. So kind of awkward there. A lot of people are saying that this is evidence, or this is like I don't want to say evidence. This is like an illustration of hypergamy, right? You've got a guy here who is clearly a beta male guy, and he's a little confused as to why, what is his status within the relationship with his wife. I guess this is his wife. I'm not even sure. So if this is something you think is a goof, let me know. But it didn't seem like a goof. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, they were really kind of like held off for a minute there, and there was sort of that pregnant pause, and I'm not sure if that was really meant to be, or if that's just the situation that they have. But I wanted to throw that in there, just to sort of start things off today, because it looks a lot like a situation where we've got a beta male guy who is just sort of coming into realizing what his relationship is based upon. This is a transactional relationship. I've talked about this on a couple of different podcasts before, where there's a difference between transactional sex and there's validational sex. That's one aspect of sex being one aspect of the relationship. There's also a transactional nature to just the marriage itself. I'm not even just talking about the sexual side of things. I'm talking about the nature of the arrangement of staying together. So you've got a guy who's let's just say it this way. If that guy was not making the kind of money that he was, would he even be in that situation? Right? That's what I'm talking about. There's that transactional nature of the relationship versus a relationship that is founded and based on genuine desire. So you've got a woman here who is clearly not interested in him when it comes to physical relationship. I've seen some of the logos and some of the promotional material for this guy. I guess he is an Asian comic or a stand-up comedian of some sorts. I don't know how involved I now have to go and dig up all this stuff so I know what the hell I'm talking about. But people were throwing this at me today, so I thought I would throw that out. Friends with benefits, transactional or validational? That's a good question. Friends with benefits is really kind of like the same thing as when we've talked about the emotional tampon, the guy who is in a relationship and he is he's there to be sort of like the phone friend, right? The guy who's there to soak up all the tears when he's the classic beta orbiter. And I got to be careful about saying that kind of stuff these days right now, but he's the classic beta orbiter, and that's the guy that is putting himself into such a position where he is providing an emotional need for a woman with 0% sex. So it's all emotional investment versus and 0% sex. Whereas friends with benefits is 100% sex and 0% emotional investment on the part of a guy. So it's like really kind of like the opposite. So when you have a friends with benefits and it's just like you are all you're doing is having sex, and all you're doing is just like saying, hey, you know what, I need to go get my sexual needs met. And I have had at least three, I would say four different friends with benefits in my history. And that's one thing that really kind of stood out to me, is like I've been sort of like the phone friend or the blue pill beta guy who was there to be the good shoulder to cry on for a girl. And then I've also been the guy who was also, the beneficiary, I guess, of friends with benefits. It's just at different points in my life and different times and different circumstances, I guess. But I'm glad that I went through those things so I can at least speak to them from experience. But I'm sorry, guys, it's very cold in the office right now. I mean, the people have the air conditioning down to, I think, like freaking 68, man. Kind of chilly in here today. Let's see. Linus, what do you have to say for me? Rolo, can you elaborate on the S&P? S&P is sexual marketplace for true average Joes. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you asked this because I think you hit me up about this question when I was on with Pat on Sunday. I've heard you say that most men don't have the sexual market value to plate spin. Do we have to make do with single moms and fatties or go to Asia? Well, gosh, that's actually a lot of questions. So let's get down to just the basic question here is, Can you be an average dude and spin plates? Yes, you can. It just depends on like what are you willing to what is good for you. So evaluate yourself. Like if you were to say what if you put yourself on a physical scale, if you put yourself on an overall sexual market value scale, where do you think you fit in on that, on say a 1 to 10 scale? We always put women on a 1 to 10 scale. Where are you on that 1 to 10 scale? And I'm only using this because we have to find some kind of way to quantify this or to qualify like what makes for a what makes for a guy who is an 8, right? Like, or what makes for a woman who is an 8. And a lot of this is subjective because a lot of guys, like, my scale is going to be different from your scale. Like there's things that I'm into when it comes to women, or if that scale can also be modified, I should say, by experience as well. So if I'm thinking a certain woman is an 8 or a 9 or a 7 or whatever, I'm basing that on my experience with women. So my experience might be different from yours. So when guys say, "Oh, that chick's a 6," and the other guys are like, "What are you, crazy? She's like a 4, man. What's wrong with you?" Or you'll see a girl who is like, a guy will say, "Oh, she's a 7," and then everybody goes, "No way, man. That's a 9.5 in my town," that kind of thing. So that scale is going to be subjective. So just in the same way, your own scale for yourself is going to be subjective, but you still have to weigh that against like hard reality. And I think that we always talk about how women are getting into like social media is overinflating their egos. It's also overinflating their own sense of their own sexual market value. So when she gets a whole bunch of atta girls from her girlfriends, when she's, obviously 20 pounds overweight, and say, "Oh, you look great, girl. You've never looked better," that kind of stuff. That is reinforcing a sense or an image in that woman's mind about where she really fits in on that sexual market value scale. And therefore she adjusts her attitude, or she adjusts like her understanding, her sense of self, I guess is really a better way of putting it. She adjusts her sense of self according to the positive or negative reinforcement that she's getting from people. Now, in the age of social media, she's usually only getting positive reinforcement, unless she goes and she really gets into unless she goes to like 4chan, or she goes to remember Am I Hot or Not? Remember that? I don't know, is that still around? Am I Hot or Not? Where you get it was a brutal, like almost Darwinist way of looking at things, but we have come a long way since then. Now, what I wanted to say is that guys need to do that too. I think that we tend to I think guys tend to overestimate their value a little bit more, and maybe that's a good thing, because evolutionarily we tend to overestimate women's interest in us, because we have to do that. We from a evolutionary perspective, men had to overestimate the interests of women, because if they didn't, it meant that they missed out on a possible reproductive opportunity for them. So there's a natural sense of guys thinking that a chick thinks that they're hot, or them thinking that they're bigger than themselves. They err on the side of too much ego as opposed to too little ego. When it comes, I mean, that's our natural sense. Now people are saying, well, we live in an age of the Lost Boys, right? Everybody, they don't even want to make approaches. They're all like, most kids of this generation, they just want to sit in their mom's basement and play World of Warcraft or something like that, right? I mean, there's that aspect, but remember, all of that had to be repressed. All of that had to be beaten out of a guy. All of your sense of self, all of your anything that has built up your ego. I mean, you have, ever since you were 5 years old, that has been systematically removed from you. So yes, you do have that generation of guys who don't really build themselves up. But so here's what I'm going to suggest. This, I'm not telling you what to do, because I never do. I don't give prescriptions. But here's what I'm going to suggest is that if you're an average guy, can you spin plates? Yes, you can, but you need to have an accurate assessment of yourself, and you need to have an accurate assessment of the women that are involved in your your social circle or the women that you want to get with. Does that mean that you have to go with fatties and everything? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just means that you have to, I will never tell a guy not to have standards or not to be discerning. On Rule 0 on Saturday, we're going to be on with Rich, and we're probably going to talk about male standards versus female standards, because he's got a really hot tweet right now that's really pissing a lot of people off. And we'll probably get into that, and it's exactly about this kind of stuff. So let's see. Wizardly Wizard, thank you for that $5, man. Do you think men can be happy without having kids? Do you have any anecdotal examples? Sure, guys can be happy without kids. But here's the thing is, like, when I say that, if I say, well, you can be happy without kids, every tradcon father is just going to be going, no way, man, I can't believe he just said that. And every MGTOW is going to go, yeah, totally, you can do that. Just go buy a motorcycle and a dog, and you can live happily ever after, right? So where's the medium? Where's the happy medium between those two? So can you be happy without children? Sure, you can. That's a choice that you have to make for yourself. If you are doing so, you are electing not to reproduce. You're electing to remove yourself really from, I don't say the sexual marketplace, because you're probably still having sex, but you are removing yourself from the reproductive game, I guess. So, keep that in mind. A lot of guys will say that their children are the greatest source of their happiness. Yeah, okay, I get that. It's really kind of a lifestyle choice. Like I have one child, and I remember when I was contemplating having another one, and I was sort of agonizing over this with my wife, and I said, should we have another kid? And I'm thinking no, and she was thinking no at the same time. I was glad we were both sort of one mind on that whole thing. And I've always followed the idea that I want to put all of my efforts into one child rather than having, I come from, I have a brother. That's it. I have one other brother. My wife comes from a family of she's the middle child of 3. And our other families have, our extended families, they have various kids. I don't think anybody has just one kid. I think we're the only ones that have one. But I made that decision back in the day because I wanted to do things. I still wanted to be able to say, hey, I'm a father, and I really love my daughter, but and she is a great source of my happiness, but I have other sources of happiness too. So, that's kind of on you. Do I have any anecdotal evidence? I can only just give you the anecdotal evidence that I have of myself. Let's see. Chris Baker here says, hey, Rolla, what do you think of Ayn Rand? What's interesting about Ayn Rand? I never really had all that high an opinion of her up until I'd heard of her, way back when I was sort of in my college days. And I think a lot of guys, particularly like more libertarian leaning guys, they have sort of a phase while they're in college, and they go through like the objectivism phase, I guess. And they read like The Fountainhead, or they read Atlas Shrugged or something like that. I never had that phase. I never really got into Ayn Rand. It just wasn't my thing. I didn't know what she was even all about. And I kind of, a lot of people, I'm going to assume that the reason you're asking me this is because a lot of what I talk about and a lot of the posts that I put out on my blog, or a lot of the stuff I put into my books and things like that, it's very objectivist, and I'm very much an objectivist. I don't think that's any great secret. But I didn't even know that Ayn Rand was associated with objectivism. I just went with what I thought, and then I had some people at the 21 conventions tell me like, well, man, what do you think of objectivism? And I'm like, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what it really meant. I mean, I heard of it, of course, but I didn't really know what it meant until somebody asked me. They said, a lot of your stuff seems very like objectivist. What do you think of objectivism? And I'm like, let me get back to you, because I didn't know anything about it. And it turns out that I have a lot in common with like guys like Yaron. Is it Yaron Brooks? I can't remember. I think Yaron Brooks. He's got his own channel. Interesting dude. I think a lot of guys who are sort of like atheist objectivists also tend to be some of the worst blue pill guys too. At least that's been my experience. So As far as she's concerned, yeah, she's had and I know enough about her to say, hey, she's had a lot of contribution, but it's just like, let's move on. Let's find something else. Let's stop going back to those things. Like, people always give me grief about when I come down hard on Carl Jung. Okay, yeah, he had some contributions. Okay, great. I think the majority of his stuff was really kind of woo-woo magical thinking and metaphysics. And if you know anything about the guy's family background, when the guy was the very first gamma who ever figured out beta game so he could get laid, right? I mean, if you look at the history of Carl Jung, and I know people are going to lose their minds in the comments about this, because Carl Jung is almost like Jesus Christ to these guys. But okay, fine. Even if I'm going to agree with you and say let's just say okay with that, it's time to move on. Yeah, he had some good things to talk about. Okay, great. So did Freud. So did B.F. Skinner. So did Maslow. But we're moving on past that. We have more information now than they ever had access to. Someone like Carl Jung never had access to understanding the architecture of the human mind. They didn't have fMRI scans back when he was doing his thing, right? They didn't have the human genome wasn't. We didn't know anything about the human genome back in the well, certainly not in the 40s, and least of all back in the 30s or somewhere around there. Okay, great. If you're a first year psych student, awesome, read about them. Okay, but like, that's where I part ways with Jordan Peterson, because he treats Carl Jung as if he is Jesus Christ. Like, he wants to become Carl Jung. It's the same thing with Ayn Rand. Great, she had some great contributions. Take those, move along with those, because we've learned a lot more since she's been dead and since Carl Jung has been dead. So let's keep going, right? I mean, okay, we're better people for it. Awesome. Let's move on. Where are we going to go from here? Some dude with a funky name. Pop says Magdalene Apostles Cuck Save Us book 4. What? All right. Well, thank you for the $2, the 2 Canadian dollars. Rock and roll. Let's see. Anybody else? Hello, Rolla. I have 2 questions. This is Ricky. Thanks, Ricky. Does text game matter on Tinder or on dating apps in general? How important, and then this is number 2, how important is height in the dating game? And I'm glad you brought that up. I think I got this question as well from somebody last time I was on with Pat. How important is height? We were just talking about the guy, the bagel guy, the guy who talks like, I mean, I'm sure most of the people who are in the chat right now are people who are going to be watching this have probably already seen the short guy who was in the bagel shop who I guess he got tackled or something like that, and then of course that got him on radio shows, and he got a whole lot of play out of that video. Instantly went viral, but the guy is literally like 5 feet. That is as tall as that guy is. Yes, sorry, height is something that women universally select for, because height is an indicator of protection. It's an indicator of security for women. It's an indicator of dominance over that woman. Physically a dominant thing. And people are going to say, well, oh my gosh, Rollo's saying that the men should be physically dominant over women. Yeah, well, here's the thing. Women select for that. Height is the number one thing that women select for. Now, are there ways to get around that with game, with the way you look, with the way you act, everything else? Yes, of course there are. Now, if you go and you look at, I think there's a chart somewhere, and if I bring this up, somebody in the chat's going to go and link me this. Please link me this, because there are several, I don't say studies, but there are several sites that show the height of leading men in Hollywood. And so if you look at a guy like Robert Downey Jr., the guy's only 5'6". And you look at some of these guys who we think of as like, heartthrobs or, the strong action hero kind of guys, they're not that tall. There's a few of them, like, was it Cumberbatch is like 6'1" or something like that. Okay, cool. Right on. But like most of these guys are not, I'm 5'11", right? So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not like 6 foot, but I'm not like 5'6". I mean, I would be taller than Robert Downey Jr. So I look at that, but who's getting more play, me or Robert Downey Jr.? Robert Downey Jr. If you look at these guys who are, they didn't allow their height to limit them. And then the other thing about height is height is a really good indicator or a really good way to measure local sexual market versus global sexual market. And I've talked about this. I'll put a link in the description after we're done here. I have a essay that I explore local versus global, and height is something that I use in there. So, and here's the example that I use. Back before in the Philippine Islands, so most Filipino men are not more than like 5'5", and I'm just saying I'm this off the top of my head. Maybe it's 5'4", maybe it's 5'5". Most Filipino men were 5'5". Okay, so if you're on the Philippine Islands and the Philippine women are there and they're like 5'4" and you're 5'5", and they look up to you, they go, "Oh my gosh, he's 5'5", or God forbid you're like 5'6" or 5'7", you're towering over most of the men there. And that is, as far as the height as being a standard, that is something that in a local sexual marketplace, which, because we're on the Philippine Islands right now, this is before the Spanish came. Now, after the Spanish came and the Western settled and everybody comes over, now they're seeing a white man that comes and lands on the Philippine Islands, and he's 5'11", and he is taller than any Filipino man that any Filipino woman has ever seen. So now you've brought in the global sexual marketplace into a localized sexual marketplace. And what's happened really, and I'm using that as an example, but what's happened right now is that's what's happening across the world right now, courtesy of the internet and courtesy of our mass communication. So it's no longer about a 5'5" Filipino man getting with a 5'4" Filipino woman. It's about a Filipino woman going, "Wow, look at that guy. He's 5 or he's 6 feet. I want to get with him, and I don't want to get with the guys who are in my local sexual marketplace." Now, I'm using this, and I don't think this is a racial thing. I'm just saying this happens not just on the Philippine Islands. This happens all over the world, in Paducah, Kentucky, and to Reno, Nevada, and Miami, Florida. Those were localized sexual marketplaces, which are now globalized sexual marketplaces. So as such, you have to learn how to find ways to cover or to compensate for those deficits. How do you do that? We always say, well, he's got short man's disease. He has to get in the gym and look like he's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but unfortunately he's only 5 foot tall. Well, okay, he's in there, he's trying to compensate. Maybe he's not going to get with a 6-foot Amazon blonde from Sweden or Norway, but he can still do okay with women around his size, or maybe even a little bit taller than him, if he has that. Remember, alpha is a mindset. It is not a demographic. So are there ways to compensate for that? Yes. Is it difficult? You're damn right it's difficult. So but are you up for that challenge? So there you go. I got a bunch of new ones here. Hang on, guys. I got to backtrack a little bit. Let's see. Red 71 says, as a 48-year-old woman, younger men just want sex. Older men just want a carer, and men a career, I guess. And men my age are either bitter or want younger. I'm single for the rest of my life. At 48 years old, how good do you look? Let's be realistic here. Men select for beauty and age. And if we go and we look at the harsh truths of all of this, there's a great book called Dataclysm, and it was all of these statistics. That's one good book. There's another one called A Billion Wicked Thoughts by August and Ogvai, I think those are the name of the researchers who did the study for that. Although that's kind of getting dated. That was back in like 2005, I think, or 2006 is when Billion Wicked Thoughts came out. But Dataclysm is a little more recent. I think it's 2013, maybe 2014. On both of those books are studies of internet statistics of what men are selecting for, particularly the data from Dataclysm, which is most guys of every age, from 15 all the way up to 80 or 90 years old, prefer a woman who is between the ages of 21 and 24 years old, somewhere in there. Sometimes it changes, but mostly it's right around 22 or 23 years old. That's what they report as being the most attractive age across the board, all the way from 15 all the way up to 80. Women, on the other hand, look for men who are anywhere between 5 to 7 years older than them. Some people will say it's 3 to 5. Some places will say it's 5 to 7. So let's just say 3 to 7 years older than they are. And that's per age bracket. So if a woman is 30 years old, she's looking for a guy who's anywhere between 33 and 37 years old, somewhere in that range, because women understand that it takes men longer to mature. It takes them longer to achieve the things that maximize their potential, that maximizes their sexual market value. And I'm not just talking about how good the guy looks. I'm saying what are his achievements, because women have different prerequisites for men than men have for women. And that's where you're falling in here, is like, what did you say here? You said older men just want a career. I don't know. It just kind of depends. Who are you going for? It's kind of hard for me to break this down. I don't even know if this is legit, but I think that younger men just want sex. Well, hey, welcome to planet Earth, right? Older men just want a career, and men my age are either bitter or want a younger one. Well, are they bitter because they don't want you, or are they bitter because that's the cards that life dealt to them? So I think what you're asking here is, am I single for the rest of my life? Well, statistically, after 35, your chances as a woman, your chances of actually marrying drop precipitously. So I don't know whether you are or you're not. I think that you could probably do things to maximize your sex appeal and certainly maximize your attraction potential. So there is that, but are you willing to do that? Most women aren't. Most women won't do that because they believe that men are there to cater to their needs rather than the other way around. And now at 48 years old, you have to sort of not just get yourself back in the game and maximize your own attraction potential, because you've just described this. Yeah, that's what they want. They want sex appeal. So are you willing to do that for them? Are you willing to actually do something for the express pleasure of a man? Because most women, particularly your age at 48 years old, have been brought up in feminism, and feminism has taught women that they are never to do anything for the express pleasure of a woman, or express pleasure of a man. That's the whole thing about the strong, independent woman trope, right? Independent of men. You're independent from the necessity of a man. Oh, I want a man. Okay, fine, you want a man, but here's the thing: is you're not willing to do anything to get that guy. You're not willing to understand or learn the concept of value added. And that's where women really kind of lose it. Women get very upset, and particularly like the older women get, like when women are between the ages of say 21 and about 27 or 28 years old, they don't care about like what, they don't have the concerns you do. They don't have oh man, men only want me for sex. Yeah, they're like, yeah, I'm glad they do. We're gonna have fun. It's our party years. Let's go do it. It's when they get to be about 27 or 28 years old, and then suddenly it's like, oh, is that all they really want? And then what they end up doing is they have this conflict. They have this struggle in their lives, and that struggle is because they've been taught since the time they were little girls by their female teachers that they should never do, that they can be anything and they can do anything, and that men are just there to sort of serve their interests and to be supportive and to be a quote unquote equal partner, just like Sheryl Sandberg says. And then they realize that the power dynamic, or the attraction dynamic shifts. And so men who didn't have the attraction, the arousal power back when they were in their 20s, now suddenly they find that they do have those things, and they become the prime sexual selectors. So at 48 years old, you're not just fighting against women your age, you're fighting against the competition of women who are 38, 28, 18, somewhere in within that range. Okay, anything that's younger than 48 years old, that's your competition. So what is setting you apart from that competition? Are you better looking? You go, hell yeah, I am. I go to the gym every day. I have a personal trainer, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. What else? What else do you have? Because you have to add value on top of your sexuality. Most women don't do that because they believe that all they have to do is show up naked and bring beer. And that's all it boils down to is just the guy just wants to see a hot chick and have sex with that guy, and that's it. Well, that's fine if you're in your 20s, because that's what's going to keep those guys interested. But the guys that you want to have a long-term relationship with, there has to be something else there, and you have to be willing to bust yourself down, and you have to be willing to humble yourself, and say, look, I'm going to do something, or I'm going to try to make myself better because, or in some way, I'm going to learn to cook. I'm going to be a better cleaner. I'm going to be more feminine. I'm going to be whatever it is. We'll talk about this, like I said, on Rule Zero on Saturday, about like the prerequisites that men have. But see, what happens is women sexualize themselves, and then they get upset that men only see them as sex objects. Well, yeah, they do, because what else do you bring to the table? Nothing, because feminism has taught you not to bring anything other than sexuality, because they're supposed to serve your interests, not you serve men's interests. And so now you have to rethink your life, and you have to rethink all of that stuff. And most women can't even get to that point. They're just like, no, they'll get into a relationship with a beta guy who's more than happy to knuckle under because he's hardly ever had sex in his life, and he's just happy to be getting it. And so they wonder why their model for masculinity is this weak guy that they married, and they want to actually have sex with Jason Momoa, but they're stuck with Rick Moranis. they're stuck with Seth Rogen, right? They're stuck with that guy. And then that's what they have to compare masculinity to. So who wants to do anything special for that guy? If it was Jason Momoa, they'd be happy to dress up and do whatever they wanted, for that guy, but they're not willing to do that. They're not willing to bust themselves down and have any sense of humility. Women today have no sense of humility whatsoever. Most Western women don't. I mean, unless they're brought up in some sort of religious context, or they get to a point where they have no other choice but to become like humbled, or to humble themselves. It's one thing to be humbled. It's another thing to humble yourself. It's another thing to have humility. And I don't think we actively teach against that when it comes to women and when it comes to our young girls. God forbid, what do they say? They say, was it silent or quiet women rarely make history, or speak up kind of thing, or stop apologizing, and don't call me bossy. Well, you are bossy and you are bitchy, and sorry, that's just how men are going to see you, because we are, evolution, 100,000 years of evolution encoded us to read your response as being masculine and bitchy and bossy. Sorry, that's just how it is. But are you willing to bust yourself down? Are you willing to relearn those things? Most women can't, or they only relearn it when they're forced to. So you've got a woman who is, a single mother of two. She either most likely she divorced the guy, and now she's trying to get back into the game. And she says, "Oh, look at these red pill guys. They should serve me. So I'm going to be a sun hat trad. I call femcon, woman who suddenly she finds faith, and suddenly she's not anything like she used to be, and now she wants to cook apple pies and have great Thanksgiving dinners, and she wants to be this perfect homemaker, whereas just 5 years prior she was, I'm never going to do anything for any man. Okay, you've just been forced into that position. Wizardly Wizard, that is quite the name, my friend. How do you distinguish being alpha from masculine overcompensation due to insecurity? Well, demonstrate, do not explicate. Most guys who are, I think a lot of guys have that. Most guys today have that sense that we're looking for that bluster. We're looking, oh, this guy's just full of himself. He's just projecting. He's just trying to be somebody he's not. And the reason we say that somebody is trying to be something that they're not is because they're acting in a way that we can't control. They're acting in a way that we think, like, if you can't compete against somebody, if somebody is clearly your superior, and whether that's physically or mentally or financially, I mean, think of all the ways that men attract women. Think of all the things that make a man competent. And if you've got a guy who is more competent than you in more things, what are you going to do in terms of intra-sexual competition? Well, you're going to say, well, he's overcompensating. Oh, look, he had to be there's this guy at my gym, and I'm not going to name names, but the dude is like freaking yoked, and he has like this huge ass, like bright red 4x4 that lifted. I think it's like a Dodge 2500 or something like that. I mean, shit. And it's beautiful, beautiful car, and then our truck, and then his license plate says compensate, or and I was laughing so hard when I saw that. But at least you can sort of laugh at yourself. If you see a guy who's like that, who is physically and mentally and life wise is in some way superior to you, we want to say something. We want to find some way to at least, if not bring the guy down, not sound like a fanboy. So how do you distinguish being alpha from masculine overcompensation? Well, again, alpha is as alpha does. Watch what the person does. Is it all talk? Is he doing things that, or is that guy doing things because, is it, I'm gonna say this, is his behavior a result of his alpha mindset, or is his behavior just something that he's doing that maybe you know better, or maybe you don't know about? I don't know. But I think really what it comes is being a better character, first of all. But understand your own bias is going to be mixed up into that as well. I think that the word insecurity gets thrown around about guys a lot more than like when I talk about, when I criticize people for saying, oh, that's your masculine insecurities. Whenever I hate that word, I hate that term, because that's been a control word for feminism for a very long time, and we're still sort of recovering from it. Think about how long, you're insecure in your masculinity. Well, all that is, when somebody says that, what they're doing is they're saying, I have the masculinity pride. I've got the masculinity medal right here, and you don't get to be a man unless you do what I tell you to. And if you're not doing the things that I tell you to, it must simply because you're insecure and you don't know how to be a man, because I'm the one that's withholding the masculinity, the manhood prize. So how do you enforce that? You say, well, you're insecure. Well, no, I'm not insecure. In fact, I can remember here's an example. One time I was at a work function, and everybody wanted to go to, I think it was like October, and it was the breast cancer awareness month, and we were going to go do some walk. I think this was in Orlando, Florida, and we were going to do some walk, and everybody was supposed to wear like a pink shirt or something like that. And I didn't wear I'm not going to wear a pink shirt. That's not me, right? And of course, what they say is, well, you're not mad, or you're too insecure in your masculinity to wear pink. And I told the guy, I said, no, I am so secure in my masculinity that I'm not going to wear the pink that you're going to try to put on me. And that was the end of that conversation, because I get to decide what is secure and what is insecure, right? For me, thank you very much. And so you foisting your expectations and your, what you basically, your expectations on me is not going to be as that I'm going to define the frame here, and I defy your frame. Sorry, simple as that. Let's see what else. Thanks, Sam, for recording all of these great things. Hector Soto, MX50. Does that mean I got 50 pesos? That's awesome. I will file for divorce tomorrow. What can I do to minimize the impact on my 4-year-old daughter, since my wife will most likely keep custody? Oh man, that's rough. Actually, that's more of I think that's probably a better question for Rich Cooper. I can only tell you from the perspective of my third book, which is Positive Masculinity, and what that means is you've got to stay involved as much as you possibly can. Understand what you're up against. You're filing for divorce here, so there has to. I don't know what the particulars are in your situation. Like, do you want to get out because you're in a sexless marriage? Do you want to get out because she cheated on you? There's a lot to unpack and all of that, but since you believe that your wife is going to keep the custody of your 4-year-old daughter, how do you minimize the impact of that? I think you need to. I mean, you're not gonna sit down and rationalize and reason with a 4-year-old girl. Okay, think about that for right now. Understand that you're going to have to in some way demonstrate to her, because kids don't learn from what you say, they learn from what you do. So you're going to have to in some way impress upon her that you are still her dad and you are still a big part of her life. And here's the bigger thing I think that you need to consider is that if your ex-wife or your soon-to-be ex-wife remarries, you need to establish yourself in your daughter's life as the positive, masculine, conventionally masculine role model of masculinity for her in her life. And that means you don't get to be an absentee father. I'm gonna tell you that you don't get to be you don't get to just walk away and do whatever. I would presume you have some reasons for doing what you're doing. Make sure that you demonstrate and you do not just explicate. I mean, later, maybe when she gets a little bit older, then you can say, hey, here's my reasonings. But you need to be able to get to that point in the first place, which is willing to listen to you as, as a sub-adult, I guess. So my advice to you is to demonstrate and do not explicate. And you have to decide here's the thing you have to do is you have to decide for yourself that you are going to be the one. You are going to be, no matter who else comes into her life, you are going to be her model. And I don't want to say role model. I say you're her model for conventional masculinity. You have to make that commitment to yourself first and then demonstrate that to her. Radu, $10. Thank you, brother. Finally, in a country where Superchat is available. All right. Thank you for everything. My question is how to deal with feminists, my men and women. Yes. At work, since I can't completely avoid them as a manager or not. That's a really tough one because right now we live in a feminine primary society. So I think what you have to first understand is that you run the risk. You run the risk of confronting them. You run the risk of saying the wrong thing. If you are a red pill wearer guy, there's always going to be like this attitude that you want to either help guys out, like maybe you want to unplug one of your coworkers or something, or maybe you want to say, hey, why don't you go check out the Rational Mail, or hey, why don't you go read this, or even just asking the wrong questions, right? Or what do you think of this video over here? What do you think that here's this female teacher who had sex with her 13-year-old student. What do you think of that? Like, think about current affairs and things like that. You have to be very careful of that because in most corporate, I'm assuming you're in corporate America, I guess, in Western society, in Western social work cultures are entirely feminized right now. There's a reason why HR departments, like the cliche for the HR department is sort of the purple-haired feminist. Is it's always run by women. In fact, I can't even I mean, from the casinos and stuff that I've worked at, in some of the agencies I've worked at, and pretty much any of the corporate jobs I've worked at, like, I mean, unless I was the one that was, gosh, even in the import exporters I work for, every HR department I have ever had to deal with, it has been almost 100% women. So that defines, and there's a reason for that. That defines the work culture in the United States for sure, and then in Western culture in general. So what has happened is this. Back in the 60s, back in really the 50s too, post-war Western society, businesses were male dominated. Now women will say, well, they're still male dominated. We don't have enough women in the boardroom. Okay, whatever. They were way more male dominated back in 1956 than they were in 2016. Okay. So what's happened is the businesses that were developed and the work culture that used to be defined by the masculine has been progressively infiltrated. It was a male space, right? I've talked about male space, and if you've read my books, I have a great chapter in there called Male Space, and I sort of outline this. But work culture, American Western work culture, used to be a male space, and since the sexual revolution, since the 70s, all the way up to where we are in 2019, we have been the work culture has changed because we have included women so thoroughly into that work culture that it has changed from a male space into a female space, and that's where you find yourself today. So we used to have, I'm going to use Mad Men sort of here as an example. You have this sort of old boys kind of network, and then what happened even in Mad Men? What happened when we put women into that mix? Well, these guys who are these alpha guys end up becoming more beta, or they end up trying to figure out ways to not necessarily lord over women, but like to in some way impress women. And so it goes from being impressed to ceding more and more control. And so here we are, we've ceded all this control in corporate America to a feminine way of doing things. So I've got a post, but I've got I got a chapter in one of my books that I'm working on right now, and I make that distinction where men tend to be more capitalist and women tend to be more socialist. And the reason for that is because in our hunter-gatherer ancestral past, men's interaction with men was based on merit, and it was based on doing things and how well did you do. It's based on competency, right? I mean, that's what women are looking for. They're looking for the most competent guy, or they're looking for the most dominant and the most competent guy, and usually, hopefully, that's the same guy, right? And so is it imperfect? Yes, of course it is. But men tend to be more meritorious. They tend to, like, when you give men a group of men resources, you give them money, you give them X amount of dollars, and you give a group of women X amount of dollars. Women tend to approach this more socialist. They want to go, okay, here's one for you, Susie. Here's one for you, Jennifer. Here's one for you, Anne. Here's one for you, Mary. And so everybody's getting their equal one. So that's usually how women and again, this is because women were the gatherers. Men, on the other hand, were the hunters. And so whoever did the best work, or whoever had more skin in the game for killing the woolly mammoth, or maybe invading another tribe, or doing whatever, that guy, the guy who had the more physical prowess, the guy who had the better idea, the guy who, he gets the choice cuts of the meat, right? Or maybe his family gets a little bit better, and then everybody else gets the rest, kind of thing. So there's this meritorious sense for men. I'm not saying that's always fair. Okay, I'm just saying that's the focus. That's where men's brain goes to, because we're more interested in things, and women are more interested in people. And if you don't believe me, you can go take up that issue with Dr. Steven Pinker. So you've got a business that is built on a meritocracy that is a male space in corporate America, and that's the way it used to be from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, maybe up and through the 80s. And then gradually we insert more and more women into that space. And now it's become a more pro-female, pro-feminine way of doing business, first of all. And then second of all, it's no longer, I mean, there's still intra-sexual competition amongst women, don't get me wrong, but it's the dynamic, the work dynamic has changed. So you have to be very, very careful of that in your workplace, and understand, like, I realize that's a really long-winded way of saying, you have to be careful in your workplace or around feminists. I forget which law of power it is, but it's always, what is it? When you do, like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, kind of thing. Like, think as you like, but act as others do. And I would say that keep that in mind. But the trick of that law of power, and this is what I would say, if you're in a very feminist, female-dominated workspace, understand that you're going to have to sort of nod your head and go, yeah, okay, whatever, and you just think as you want, but you're going to still have to behave in ways until you can make changes that you in your life. What am I going to tell you? Unless you have a career, I would be very careful for men. You want some advice? Here's some advice. I would be very careful today for men, telling men today, to get involved in a workplace that you see is overtly feminist, overtly feminized, overtly. I mean, you can walk around like a cubicle farm, and you can see women's cubicles and you can see men's cubicles. And if you go and you look in women's cubicles, and they got all this crap everywhere and all that stuff, and everything says resist. Okay, you know what you're dealing with, right? You can see those things. Like, a woman's got, it's okay for a woman to have, like, the hot fireman calendar up in her cubicle, but it's not okay for the guy to have the Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar up in his. Okay, so what does that tell you? That tells you you're in a female-dominated workspace. What are you doing there? Is that the best place you could possibly be working, or can you work somewhere else? Is that the best place? Or maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to get out of that and find something else to do. That's when you got to sort of reassess your goals and reassess why you're into doing what you're doing. I don't know what you do for a living, so I can't really say Radu, but there you go. Be very careful. Let's see. Theodore Skinner, thank you for that book. Let's see. Anybody else? Sorry, I'm catching up with everything right here. Okay. anybody has any other questions, please feel free to ask them at this stage. If you do not have questions, I'm going to move on to my next thing here. I'm going to do my first ever kind of recorded video. Most everything, if you're a fan of this channel, if you subscribe to this channel, you probably know that I almost exclusively do like live chats or live streams, or like I like interaction. I mean, that's just where I come from. I come from I come from a forum background where I constantly have an interaction between people, and we have a conversation. I've always liked that, so that's what I do. Like doing this right here, I feel like I'm talking to myself in this room right here. I mean, I see everybody's here as well, so thank you very much. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing some recorded videos where I'm just doing straight up, like kind of like what Ryan Stone is doing right now. And I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I think it might be a good thing to do some like quick hit videos, like maybe 5 to 8 minute videos. And one of the topics that of course, as you might guess, one of the topics I'm going to start with is going to be hypergamy. And the reason I'm going to do that is because there's so much misconception about that right now. Architect Arkareth or whatever he said. Hey Rolo, killed by divorce and still barely scraping by. 51. What would be most important for me to focus on to improve my dating life and SMB for the future? Only 2 more years paying. Okay. Well, why aren't you? Divorce killed you. I don't know enough about the background there, but only 2 more years of paying. I presume that's either child support or alimony. Here's the best thing you can do. Don't get back into it. Don't marry again. And the reason I'm saying that is because statistically, most guys in your age cohort want to remarry. And they want to because they tend to be more lonely. They tend to want, especially if they, it's interesting. I keep reading all of these articles about how guys want to remarry, and that that's because all these guys struggle with loneliness. And if only they knew how to love, or if they can, dare to love again. And of course, they're all written by like women, or they're written by very feminized men, because they believe that men should in some way emote and feel the same way as women, because that's the defining sense in this, in this time. So don't think that you have to get remarried. Don't believe in the myth of the lonely old man. I would also say this: at 51 years old, you are in a much better position as a man than you would be if you were a 51-year-old woman. What was I just talking about to the 48-year-old who was worried that she was going to be lonely for the rest, or she was going to be alone, or she was never going to find a person in the next, and whatever, she's 48 years old. Her prospects are way different than your prospects. Here's what I'm going to tell you to do. First of all, focus on your physique. Make sure that you're looking as best as you can. Most guys who are coming out of divorce, and you said divorce killed you, and I presume that you're still, like I said, you're still paying. If that stops, I mean, why aren't you just doing this right now? I mean, why do you have to wait until you're done paying? I mean, let's get your ass in the gym. That's the first thing you can do, because that one of the things that like most guys in the manosphere, most guys in when they're talking about red pill stuff, their first suggestion is to get into the gym. Why is that? Well, first of all, you got to look better. The guys always get upset when they're, well, you just want to feel better and you're going to the gym for yourself. No, you're okay. Maybe you're doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it because you want to look better. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look better for the opposite sex. Okay. I mean, I've been working out since I was 17 years old. And I like sex too much to ever let myself go. We'll be upfront with everybody here. We're going to have this great one-on-one talk. I like sex. I like sex so much that I don't want to see my fat ass in the mirror or something like that if I'm having sex with my wife on vacation somewhere. Okay, that's just me. I'm never gonna allow that to happen, because I've always been that way. Since I was in my 20s, I've always been in pretty good shape. In my rock star 20s, whatever. I knew the deal, and you're only going to be able to expect to get with a woman that is, your physical, the same physical standard as yourself, right? I mean, how can you expect to be? I don't know how guys can do that. Like a lot of guys will say, like, I'll talk to fat guys, and fat guys will think, well, I don't have to worry about it because women aren't as visual. No, they are every bit as visual as men. And just because it's not something that you read about every day, although I just posted on my Twitter feed a link to an article. Unfortunately, it's in the Guardian, but it's a Guardian article that was part of a research thing where they went and just whoa, lo and behold, they found out that women are every bit as visual as men are. So don't think for a second that women aren't into that. And if you don't believe me, go ask your grandma as to why she wanted to go see Aquaman when it came out in the theaters. Okay. So yeah, you've got to have some sort of physical appeal. And that's the other thing is one of the reasons we tell guys to do that is because it also changes your mind about yourself. It changes your physical makeup. If you have been sedentary all your life and suddenly you get in the gym and suddenly you have more of a concern about your body, that's going to change your attitude. It's going to change your mood. It's going to change a lot of things. I mean, it's going to change your biochemistry just because maybe you're eating better, or maybe you've decided that you're going to go and, run a mile every day or something like that. I don't know. But now you've changed your biochemistry. You've got endorphins running through your body that are helping you feel a little bit better about yourself. And so hopefully you build on that and you create a positive feedback loop. So that's number one. Number two is don't feel like you have to get back into a long-term relationship immediately. When I talk to guys who are out of a divorce, most guys, when they come out, remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of guys are betas, 20% of guys are, let's just say, for lack of a better term, alphas. I'm just throwing this out. I'm not saying that they're crazy alpha, monkeys or whatever. I'm just saying that the 80-20 rule, 80% of guys are still going to be beta, and most of those guys are going to have an average number of sex partners anywhere between 4 to 7 sex partners, if they even have that. So you've got a guy who maybe he got married right around 30 because he fell into the idea, he was a beta in waiting, and he got married right around that time. Well, now he's been like this guy was saying a minute, marriage destroyed me. Okay, well, how long did it take for you to get destroyed? From the time you were 30 until you were full 51? How long were you married? When I'm talking to guys who have been married and have been in sexless relationships, the thing that they tend to focus on almost immediately is they think that there's only one way to sort of solve their problem, and that is to get into another long-term relationship as quick as they possibly can. Because they're, in a sense, they're kind of monkey branchers themselves. They feel like they're only safe, they're only secure when they're inside of a relationship. And so because their wife left them, or because whatever, because they've split up with the woman, they tend to think that the first thing they want to do is, I want to find somebody to spend the rest of my life with. Don't do that. Spin plates. Most guys never spin plates in their lives. They're serial monogamous. They go from one relationship to the next. Then they finally get they find the one. And then they get married, they have kids, and then later on they get divorced. And then they look back and they go, damn. And what I find interesting is most of these guys, when they're in a sexless relationship, they fantasize about having sex with other women. They fantasize, or they're addicted to porn. They wonder why they're addicted to porn, because they're trying to grasp what it is that they felt that they're missing in their sex lives. And so they have these fantasies of like, oh man, when I'm divorced, once I'm out of this relationship, I'm going to go crazy. I'm just going to go have hookers and blow in the Bahamas or something like that. They'll play that fantasy in their head. And then as soon as they're out of the relationship, that's when, oh my God, I'm lonely. I really better find somebody soon, and what happened to that dude? What happened to that guy who wanted to go to the Bahamas and do hookers and blow? Well, that guy right there is replaced with the guy who's like, suddenly I'm lonely and everything. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Please don't be that guy. Understand that when you're as a 51-year-old man, as a 40, in your mid 40s, whatever, you are in a better position to be a sexual selector than any woman is. And guys, there's some guys who are going to disagree with me. They're going to say, well, a woman just has to spread her legs and she can have anybody, but she can't have the guy that she wants. She can have anybody, but does she want just anybody? No. But on your side, most guys don't realize that they, like when we were talking, I was talking with Pat 2 weeks ago about midlife crises. and how they're really more like midlife epiphanies. And really, they're not crisis. The reason I say that is because they tend to come to their senses and they realize the role that they play. Like the jig is up. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe I fell for this crap. And now I'm locked into this. And if I get out, then I'm going to owe alimony for the rest of my life, and I've got child support until I'm. And so suddenly they realize that they're in a trap, like that the trap is already sprung on them, and it's got them by the leg, and they can't get out of it. But they don't see it. They're just, I don't know. They're just looking around. Then suddenly they're 44 years old. And oh crap, I'm in a trap, right? They don't really realize that. And they look at that and they don't understand that had they waited, this is why women hate me. Okay. Because I tell guys, your sexual market value peak years are right around 36, 37, 38 years old. Men's sexual market value is slow burn. It's slow to increase, assuming you do it right, assuming you maximize your potential. It's slow to increase, but it's slow to burn once you hit that apogee. Once you hit the apex of your sexual market value peak. At 51, gosh, there was a thing, I think it was also in The Guardian or something, where they were saying that guys' sexual market value peaks at 50. And I'm like, okay, that I don't agree with. Okay. I think that your maximized potential, where you're going to do your greatest work, is going to be right around 38. Let's just say that. That's when you have the most potential to do things. But guys, what do they do? That's why we say, when they get to a midlife crisis, 38, 39, 40 years old, they're going like, holy shit, I'm in this trap. What am I going to do? Well, because they didn't listen to Rollo back when they were 28 years old. They didn't read the Rational Male when preventive medicine. They didn't see the timeline back earlier, and they didn't hold out until they had maximized themselves and then decided who they were I'm going to marry that one, or maybe I'm not going to get married at all, right? Because we were just discussing that. Can you be happy? And so what do is they look at that and they realize, oh my God, I had all this potential and now I'm stuck. Well, what happens when you get unstuck? Just like you. What happens when you get unstuck? What are you going to do? Are you going to go and say, you know what? That trap was really great. I think I'll put my foot right back in that trap. Don't do that. Okay. Understand that even at 51, you have more sexual selectivity. You have at 51 as a man, assuming you've done something with your life, and assuming you are in some way still good looking, and you're at the gym and you're doing the most that you can for yourself. And I'm not trying to say, just go looks max or whatever. I'm just saying that if you've done the most with yourself, you are always going to be in a better position to select women who are going to be younger than you. Yes. Don't go older, but you can certainly select women for anywhere from, like, say 35 on up. I would say average. I mean, it's not like, say, that you couldn't go pick up somebody who was in their late 20s, but you're not going to have her. Maybe you can have sex with her, but you're not going to have, like, I'm not going to marry this girl. You're not going to marry a girl who's 28 years old, because you've already gone through those years, and maybe you don't know what's coming to you in the next 20 years. When you're 51, what's it going to be like when you're 71? Don't do that to a girl who's 27 years old. Just don't. But if you find a woman who's 35, 38, 39, whatever, understand that you control the frame. Keep that in your head. You have the frame. All right, let me see what else I got here. Okay, that was our. Let's see. Gilbert says, hi. Oh, excuse me. I hear from some red pill people say that women can be trained. Trained how? I believe in the setting boundaries, not training. Okay. You probably saw Rich Cooper's video on this, and Rich, excuse me. And Rich doesn't believe that you can train women. And I guess I understand why he says that. I'm not saying I disagree. I don't think they are as trainable as a lot of guys believe they are. The reason why you don't want to train a woman is because you are negotiating desire. That is always, if you've read anything I've ever written, I'm really big on engendering genuine desire between a man and a woman. You want that woman to want to be the way you want her to be, not the way she has to be. So remember, when you negotiate desire, you only end up with obligated compliance, if you get that compliance at all. So I can put a gun to your head and I can make you do whatever I want you to do. Does that mean you want to do it? Probably not, because I got a gun to your head, right? But, and that's the extreme example. But like, let's say I am pulling your strings, or I control your security, or I'm the one who's signing your paychecks. Are you going to do what are you going to do what I say out of love and devotion to me, or are you going to do it because if I don't, or if you don't, I'm not going to sign your paycheck? So that's really like when we talk about training and boundaries and things like that. Remember, it's better to be loved than better be loved than feared, but sometimes fear is necessary. We've talked about dread before as well. But I believe in passive dread, not necessarily overt dread, and really that's what training is all about. Now, I think what's interesting is when a guy says, "Oh, can I train my girlfriend?" and women just lose their mind. Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. And then I'll go and I'll watch a video from Diana Fleischman who says, "Oh, you can totally train your boyfriend. Here's how you do it with behavioral psychology." And that's my background, behavioral psychology. So when she's talking about operant conditioning and extinction bursts and all this other stuff, I'm listening to this. I'm going, now, if I had rephrased that, if I had said, "Oh, here's how you can control your girlfriend. Here's how you can train your girlfriend," like, I lose my job. I get run up the flagpole for suggesting something like that. But if a behavioral psychologist says something to the opposite, then that's different. Why is that? Because the dynamic is different. We're not allowed to, like, men are not allowed to train their women because women are people too, and you should have a more equal, egalitarian relationship. Well, guess what? Men and women both do what's called behavioral modification. So if you are a guy and you insist on your own frame, you're doing what's called behavioral modification, because that woman doesn't get to engage and to be a part of your life or a part of your frame unless she is performing desired behavior. I'm speaking of this like as clinically as I can. Okay, people say, "Oh, he's a monster. He doesn't talk about emotions enough. What about her feelings?" Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what is she doing and why is she doing it. That's behaviorism. This is, a lot of people don't know this. I think this is sort of like the prime directive of behaviorism, is that behavior is the only indicator of motive and is the only indicator of intent. And we all in the red pill, we talk about this all the time. We say, well, believe what she does, don't believe what she says. Well, of course, women go, "Well, same thing works for guys. Don't believe what he says, believe what he's doing." Well, okay, that's where that comes from, is what is that person doing? Like, I have a very famous post called "The Medium is the Message." And what I mean by that is, like, guys always say, "Well, I'm getting these mixed signals from her." No, you're not. She's telling you exactly what she means. It's just you're not willing to hear it because you don't want to hear it. And what I mean, you don't want to see it, is really what you don't want to do. You don't want to accept that her behavior is communicating to you what her real intent is. And that's where we go back to behaviorism. So what are her behaviors, and what are her behaviors telling you? Her medium, her behaviors, is the message. So her intent, her motives, why is she doing what she's doing? And women get really upset when I talk about iron rule of Tomasi number 3. Any woman that makes you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait. Like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that." Well, these guys they're so duplicitous. They don't understand. What, is she supposed to be a slut? Is she supposed to not, she's supposed to just have sex with you on the first date? No, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that if she is making you wait, or if she has, by her actions, or maybe overtly said, "I'm going to make you wait to have sex," the sex is never worth the wait. Why? Because here we go. Let's go again. Behavior and motive, behavior and intent. Why is her behavior doing this? Well, people say, "Well, she doesn't want you to think she's a slut." Well, okay. What that says to me is that her desire for you is not as intense as it is to get past that, to say, "You know what? Remember, we always say is women will make rules for betas and they will break rules for alphas." Why is that? Well, again, behavior, motive. Why will they break a rule? Behavior. And what's the motive behind that? Well, because she wants to get with a guy who's a high value man, and she doesn't want to miss that opportunity, whether that's for sex or that's trying to lock the guy down. So that's the motive. So you're looking at behavior versus motive. And so when we're talking about how to train your, or here's a better one. You were talking about I believe in setting boundaries, not training. Okay, well, that is training. Okay, setting a boundary. Now, how are you setting a boundary? Most guys will say, well, I told her that if she ever did this, then I'm gone. That's an ultimatum. That's not a boundary. Well, boundary has to be tested. Like when you have children, and I'm not comparing women to children, although some people do. When you are dealing with children don't learn unless there are consequences to their actions. You touch the hot stove, ow, I'll never do that again. You're damn right, you'll never do that again. That's your boundary. The hot stove is your boundary. You just learned that. Great. Here's some ice water. So how are you setting your boundaries? Are you setting your boundaries by telling her what's going to happen if you do something? Or are you just saying, you know what, you did something, I'm out, bye. And the easy illustration of this is, girls' night out. Hey, I'm going to go off to Vegas with my girlfriends this weekend. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. But you don't say, no, it's not okay. Is that what you want to do? Okay, well, what that is, the medium is the message. The behavior is the behavior again. I want to go to Vegas. Why? I want to go party with my girlfriends, and we're going to go pretend like we're still single, even though I've been with you for 3 or 4 years. Okay, fine. You do that. I'll be gone when you come back. Your shit will be on the sidewalk. That's the boundary. You could tell her that, I suppose. You say your shit will be on the sidewalk, and unless it's on the sidewalk, you better damn well have a boundary right there. Fence. You can talk about a fence, or you can like run your face right into a fence. Okay, so that's a boundary. So you can say, hey, well, you can talk about all the great fences that you have in your house. If you don't see, if they're not there, then who cares? So boundaries are only as powerful as you're willing to enforce them. So I always, again, demonstrate, do not explicate. Demonstrate those boundaries. Let them make those mistakes, because the bigger problem isn't that she's asking you, hey, can I go on girls' night out? It's that she's asking at all. It's that the idea of going off to Vegas with her girlfriends and go down to Dre's and party and get bottle service or whatever is a good idea. It's a better idea to her than even thinking about how it will affect you, or thinking about like are you what's higher on her priority list? You and going to Vegas, or going to Vegas and you. That's the thought process. And guys will say, well, I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be, oh, she might call me insecure. Okay, but you're not enforcing any boundaries. So there you go. Guys will always tell you this, is like, you are only as like, what is it? You're only worth as much as you're willing to tolerate, I think, is what the guys will talk about. And I guess in a way I understand that. I understand that tolerance is, putting up with crap is one thing. It's another thing to actually set those boundaries and have a woman run into those boundaries. So remember, boundaries are only as effective as you're willing to make them effective. Let's see. Bill Smith, red pilled while married, 50 years old. Man, king of, is that my demographic here? Red pilled while married, 50 years. Thanks for that $10, Bill Smith. I'm in a loveless, sexless marriage, got myself back in shape, but have debilitating fear of leaving this poor marriage. Isn't that bad syndrome? Help me, please. All right, so here's what I'm going to suggest that you do, Bill. You can find this in my third book, and if you don't want to pay the meager $12 for that book, you can also get it for free on my blog. And I have a series of posts called The Reconstruction. And I wrote this 4-part series just for guys like you. Most of these guys, I wrote this because there were so many guys that were hitting me up who were what we called awakened while married. And remember how I was just talking a minute ago about midlife crises and how that's really a midlife epiphany. I think that more and more guys, rather than having a midlife crisis, they'll read my book, or they'll see something in the manosphere, or they'll go online and go, why do I have a sexless marriage? How do I get my wife to want to have sex with me again? That's the real big one. And then they'll probably find like the Reddit sub. They'll find the dead bedrooms sub, and then they'll just go there and they'll commiserate, and they don't have any really answers. They just want to sit there and cry. Oh, my girlfriend or my wife drip feeds me sex. I got a sex IV. Help me. So what do you do? Read that series first of all. It's not like I don't give prescriptions, but there's a lot of good suggestions in that. Let's say one of those suggestions is this: you have to break up with your wife. Okay, and I don't mean that you actually have to go and file divorce papers. I just mean up here in your head, you have to divorce your wife, or you have to break up with her. Let's not say divorce. You have to break up with her in your head. Because if I tell you all this stuff and I say, hey, here's what you got to do, Bill. You got to go and you got to get to the gym, and you got to make yourself your mental point of origin, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And I tell you all this stuff to do, and it'll probably work for you, because you'll at the very least you will have a different opinion of yourself, and that will be manifest in your relationship with your wife. But if you're doing all of this stuff because your ultimate goal is just to get your wife to have sex with you again, that's not enough, because that's not genuine. And women will see right through whether or not you have a genuine change, or if you're just doing it to make her happy, right? I've dealt with guys who like to buy things for their wives, and it doesn't matter what. They buy another dog. Oh, here's a little Pookie, here. And then of course the dog becomes their object of love and affection, and they are over there jerking off because they got the dog for their wives, right? Or they'll go and they'll buy toys, or they'll buy like, hey, we're going to go off. I know you've always wanted to go to Italy. We're going to go to Italy. And they think they're going to have sex there, and they, because it's date night, it's romantic and everything. And then they don't get any more sex than they do at home. And maybe once, right? Okay, great. But then it doesn't work out the way that they thought, because they do all of these things, but they're doing it not for themselves. They're not doing it because they want to initiate a real personal change in themselves. They're doing it because they want to get their wives to change their behavior, and that behavior is sex, right? Behavior, motive. So what's the behavior? I want her to have more sex with me. Okay, well, how do I motivate her to want to have sex with me? Well, guys always, because most beta guys, well, all guys, but certainly beta guys, are deductive problem solvers. So we think, okay, I got to do A, B, and C, and then D is I get sex. And that's because most beta guys think in terms of like transactions. Like, if I do all this stuff, then she'll want to have sex. Here's a great one. If I go and I do more dishes, or if I do chore play, right? If I do more work around the house, if I change the diapers more, if I help her around the house, then she's going to want to have sex with me more. No, provably false. Provably false over the course of more than 15 years of research. That is absolutely 100% false. So how do you do it? Oh my God. Most guys, when I talk to guys who are in your position, they tell me, like, I ask, and this is part of the reconstruction too, that they'll tell me stuff, like, I asked them, I said, do you want to break up with your wife? Why don't you, here's the simplest answer to this is just, so screw it, man. Take the hit, take the L, and get divorced, because if you, at the very least, you have a better chance of having sex with a brand new woman in your life than you will with this chick right here, because you already know what you're getting into with her. So the first part is you have to decide that you're doing this, making this change in yourself. So that's why I say in your head, you have to break up with that woman, because once you say, okay, she's just a roommate, she's just on that side of the room, she's not having sex with me anyways, why not, right? She's over there, I'm over here. If you were going to divorce your wife, what would you do? How would you prepare for that? Well, financially, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to do these. I'm going to I'm going to see a lawyer. I'm going to, set up my own bank account. I'm not telling you to do that. Do it up here. But most importantly is you have to say, okay, what would I do knowing that I'm going to get back into the sexual marketplace? What would I do? Well, you probably get in the gym, or you probably do something about yourself. You probably focus on your own. You want to become the best version of yourself. Well, most guys want to be a better version of themselves, so their wives will love them. Most guys don't want to break up with their wives. Like, when I tell them this, they're like, oh, I love her so much. How can I just make it work with her? Like, they honestly don't want to break up. They don't want a divorce. They just want their wives to actually have sex with them. Well, she doesn't want to do that because you're not finding ways to motivate her to do that. And the reason you're not is because you're not self-centered enough. You're not making yourself your own mental point of origin. You're not saying, you know what, you are now in my frame, and here's how we're going to do this. So you need to have that point of division between yourself and your wife. And then once you've broken up with your wife or your girlfriend in your head, you need to ask yourself this question. is this woman that is on the opposite side of the bedroom from me and doesn't want to have anything to do with me, is she someone that if I were single, would I get with this girl? Would I get with this woman? Knowing what I know about her right now, and even with, having the experience and maybe the history with this woman that I've had, is she somebody that I would want to date? Most guys would say, no, not at all, because she's vindictive and she's this and she's that and blah, blah, blah. But I love her so much and I still want her to be in my life. I just wish she would have sex with me. Okay, so that's not her. That's you having this idealization of this person, this idealization of this woman that she's never going to be. And so I also talk to guys about this as well. As when guys ask me, like, how do I get back with my girlfriend? Now, remember, you broke up with your wife. So what's your natural impulse? Is like, you want to get back. And iron rule of Tomasi number 7, never root through garbage once you've taken it out to the curb. Because what you thought was worth, rooting through the garbage for is never worth. It's not what you thought it was. And so what that rule is supposed to do is to get guys to realize that you're dealing with an idealization, not with an actual person. So that woman that's right over there that you just broke up with, although you're not really actually broke up, but that woman that's over there, at arm's distance, that woman that's over there, what do you, would she be somebody that if you met her in a bar, would you go home with her? And when you do that, when you depersonalize it like that, most guys say, no, God, no, why would I want to do something like that? But then they come back to reality and they go, well, I love her and we have a kid together and I really want. And then here's the thing: women don't realize that guys actually think like this. They just think that guy is an asshole and he just doesn't do what he's supposed to do, because if he did what he's supposed to do, then I'd want him. Well, no, it's just that you don't want him because he's not the man that inspires you or motivates your behavior. Remember, behavior, motive. So most women don't even realize this is even a conversation that's going on in the guy's head, because they've decided to live the way they are and they figure you've decided to live the way you are until the divorce papers end up on the dining room table. So bear in mind that, well, first of all, read the reconstruction, and then ask yourself, is this somebody that I even want to do this with? So, and when guys get to that point, when I say, is she somebody that you would want to have a relationship with? Most of them will say yes, because they still have that, I still have loving feelings for her. Okay, fine. But by that point, you have already focused on just yourself. So you've split up with her. And when you are single and solo, you have no other choice but to focus on yourself, because there's nothing else going on around you. And so you're making those changes. You're getting those changes done for yourself, not because you're thinking you're going to motivate, Mary over here to finally come around. And what women find out is what guys find out is that once they start doing that and they make those decisions and they make those improvements for themselves, not to just get her to come over and spread her legs, that it triggers women's imagination. And the woman that they thought was never going to come around to them, she knows everything about me, right? Well, that's because you're predictable. That's because you are somebody that you're everything she expects you to be all the time. Remember, perfect is boring. So when you shake things up, when you, I think it's 48 Laws of Power, it's like inspire a sense of terror, I think is one of the things, or be unpredictable is the gist of it. I forget which one. I think it might be like number 19. But why? Because now you've triggered imagination. Like, what's he thinking? Why is he doing this? Like, and so that's one way you can sort of inspire a third party, or passive dread. Passive dread is all about woman's imagination. She has to wonder what the hell's going on. What's going on in his brain? Well, maybe he's planning to leave you. Maybe he already has kind of in his head, and he's just actually decided that, he's done with your shit and he's going to go and do whatever it is that he wants to do. Well, if she doesn't come around at that point, if she's, you will, I think most guys at that point, once they focus on themselves, that part of the reconstruction, when they focus on themselves, that is the dividing point. Because if a woman doesn't wonder what he's doing, she's already checked out of the marriage, and you might as well just get a divorce at that point, because it's like leaving you is just a formality. So bear that in mind. Read the reconstruction, and I'm going to move on to some more of these. You have a crazy name, and I'm only getting $5 from Canada from you. Okay, but that's cool. You have a good question. Here it is. I'm not going to try to say this name. How do you vet a wife and kids? Man, you guys, man, it's savage today, but great for a bachelor. What actionable advice would you give a son? I can keep spinning, but no lineage. All right. Okay, so one thing that guys really don't understand when I talk about spinning plates, and I kind of lifted spinning plates from Tom Likas way back in the day, and I just sort of ran with the idea of that. And really, what spinning plates is it's dating non-exclusively. That doesn't mean you're here. Okay, let's clarify this right now, because the next thing that is the hypergamy is the most misconceived, most abused term in the manosphere. The second most is spinning plates, because guys who hate me and guys who hate the red pill and guys who just are clinging to their blue pill bullshit lives believe that spinning plates means fucking every girl that walks in. Like, you have to be a walking hard on, just bang any girl that walks through the door. That's what they think. They think you have, like, it's spamming approaches. Like, they think, oh, those pickup artists and they're spinning plates. They're just going and asking every girl in the club, and if she says yes, then one of them's bound to say yes, right? It's a numbers game. You spam enough approaches and some. No, that's not what spinning plates is. Go read the damn series. There's like, it's like an 8-part series that I wrote way back in the day too. Like that, the plate spinning, you can find them in the first book, of course, and then you can also just read them for free on my blog. But understand that plate theory, as I like to call it, that came out of like the very early 2000s. Like 2002 is when I started working on that. And that is based on non-exclusivity. So, and if you read those, you actually go in and you actually read those, you will see that I say you're not having sex with every single one of your plates. They're just women that you have that are possibilities. They're prospects. They're women you're dating. Some of them you might be having sex with. Some of them you might just be, like they say in Bender in The Breakfast Club. She's Molly Ringwald's character. Or Claire. She says, Arl, she's looking through his wallet. She says, Arl, these your girlfriends? He's like, some of them I consider girlfriends. Some of them I just consider. All right. So there's the girlfriends that you're having sex with, and then there's some you just consider. So that's plate theory, considering getting with those. So what the operative of that whole thing is that when you have a pool, when you have a group, we have a roster of women that want to be with you, that hopefully are there because based on genuine desire. And I'm not saying you have to spin every one of them. Everybody always says that. They go, oh my God, I could never do that because that would consume up too much of my time. I can't have 4 girlfriends at the same time. I'll forget my lies. It's like, you're not lying to them. You're just dating them. This is being non-exclusive. You're dating. Guess what? Instead of being a beta serial monogamist, you're dating like an adult. You're actually seeing more than one person and deciding whether that person is good for you. And so here's the other thing is people say, well, what am I going to do? I'll just spin plates for the rest of my life. No, you're not going to just spin plates for the rest of your life. In fact, if you read the series, you would find that there's a I think it's number 6. It's called transitioning. You transition from spinning plates into like choosing one of those plates and sticking with it. Now, am I saying go get married? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating for marriage, but most guys at some point they go from wanting to follow their biological, the male imperative, the masculine imperative, which is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. But you can't do that for the rest of your life. You're not going to just be this perpetual bachelor. I mean, some guys are. Some guys can do that because they're in a position, or maybe just through like genetics or whatever, they realize that they can realize that that's actionable for them. They could do that. But even those guys, if they find a girl that they like, they're going to stick with that one girl. They'll get to that. There comes a point. Now, I've said this before, and this is more to your question here, whatever your name is, with $5 from Canada. There comes a point where men have to compromise their sexual strategy to accommodate a woman's sexual strategy. And the reason for that is that's the only way you're going to have children with that woman. Now, if you have read my work, you understand what I have a few cardinal rules. And one of those cardinal rules is the cardinal rule of sexual strategies, which is this, is that for one sex's sexual strategy to succeed, the other one's sexual strategy must either be abandoned or compromised. Now, ideally, as a man, if you are going to be in a relationship with a woman, a long-term relationship, you're done spinning plates, you're going to be in a long-term relationship with somebody, then you want to at least get the best deal that you can. I don't ever suggest abandoning your sexual strategy. You can compromise your sexual strategy, and that's the way it used to be before the sexual revolution. Now, because everything has tilted in a gynocentric social order, because we've tilted so far to the feminine right now, we are expected to abandon it all. We're not even expected to pursue our innate sexual strategy, which is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. That's why guys get pissed off. Like, I can't believe you would say something like that. Yeah, because you've been trained from the time you were a little 5-year-old boy that you're supposed to be supportive, and you're supposed to do everything that mommy says, and then everything that teacher says, and then everything girlfriend says, and then everything wife says. Oh, and then everything your daughter says, and everything your niece says, and aunt says, and whoever else, whatever, or your female boss says. Because that's what you're taught to do from a very early age. And so that never works out. You're only supposed to ever think that the correct way of being with a woman is to go from long-term relationship to long-term relationship. You're monkey branching. You're serial monogamist. That's what Plate's theory is intended to get you to understand, is that you actually have sexual selection, particularly if you're a guy who you're getting into your mid-30s and you're hitting your sexual market value peak years. You now have the capacity to select from more women than you did when you didn't have more of your potential realized. So are you supposed to spin plates forever? No, of course not. I'm not going to tell you what you're supposed to do. Most guys don't. Most guys will say, well, I really like this girl. Okay, fine. Are you in a position where you can think straight and you can actually vet this person? Most men, including myself, don't vet women. They don't, because they don't have the knowledge base to vet a woman, much less the gumption, right? Much less they don't give themselves permission. We were just talking earlier before, like I said, on Saturday when we're talking with Rich, Rule 0 is going to be on Rich's channel. We're going to talk about men having standards. Rich put out this tweet about like all of these things that he wants to see in a woman, right? It's kind of like what AJ Cortez put out like about 6 months ago, I think. And predictably everybody lost their shit, right? Well, same thing. Why is it that men aren't allowed to have a standard? Why can't we say, hey, I want a girl who's feminine. She's got to have long hair. She's got to have a nice ass. She's got to be able to cook. She's got to come from a nice family. She's got to do all this, and she's got to do that, and blah, blah, blah. And women lose their minds when a man has any kind of prerequisite or standards. But yet, I would challenge you, go look at any profile on Plenty of Fish or OkCupid or any, Match.com, whatever. Go to any of those and look at the prerequisites that women have. Men are just like, is she going to be pretty? And girls are like, okay, he's got to have a job. He's got to love his mom. He's got to like dogs. He's got to have a college degree. He's got to have this. He's got to blah, blah. And that's what Hartiste Royce always called the 436 bullet point checklist that women have. They're allowed that. You, as a man, are not allowed to vet. So remember that. That's society. The society, the feminine primary social order is saying to men, how dare you? How dare you have any standards? How dare you have the capacity to even think that you should be able to vet? Right? That's when we talk about strong, independent woman. Right? Well, independent from men. So if she's independent from you, how dare you? Like the 48-year-old woman that was just asking, oh, am I going to be lonely for the rest of my life? You're damn right you're going to be lonely. You know why you're going to be lonely is because up until a certain point where you were desperate enough to ask these questions, you thought the same way. How dare you have any standards? How dare you vet me? You know, who are you? You're not my judge. You're not my God. You know, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I would like a nice feminine woman. The woman that I want to marry and maybe have kids with and would like to settle down with. Well, she's kind of has some qualities, and these are the qualities I'm looking for. Well, maybe you can have those, but you're not supposed to talk about those. And so what are you willing to put up with, and what are you not willing to put up with? So what actionable advice would I give to my son? Well, first of all, the most important advice you need to have, if you're going to, this question's all over the place, so I'm just going to say this. The most important thing you can instill in your son is mental point of origin, because every female teacher in his life, and that's from mommy to his kindergarten teacher, preschool teacher, to his, postgraduate teachers, are going to tell him, and Disney and popular media and music and everything else is going to smash into his head. They're going to say, you need to put women as your mental point of origin, and you need to never think about yourself first. And how dare you have any standards? That's where that comes from. How dare you think about yourself? How dare you put yourself on the pedestal? How dare you have yourself as your own mental point of origin? You should never do anything like that. Only women get to select. Right. And why do they do that? Because they're deathly afraid that they're never going to be able to maximize hypergamy. So only women get to choose. Only women get the standards. Men don't get the standards. We don't get to vet. Right. At least socially, we're not supposed to. Now, I don't think that that's true. I think that you should absolutely vet. So what are you gonna do? What do you want? What do you want out of a girl? And give yourself permission to say, this is what I'm looking for. And if I don't find that, then I'm moving on. I'll do whatever I want to do, because I am now in a position where I can make a better selection. We got a lot more. Let's see. Here's one. I'm sorry, guys. I am trying to catch up. Oh, Bunny Marie. All right. Sorry, Bunny. I got a few more ahead of you. Jonathan Vegas. Who else? Holy mackerel. I missed a lot of these. My bad. If I miss you, okay. Now I caught up. Here we go. Okay. Johnny, I'm going to call you just Johnny Vegas, because it sounds like Johnny Rico from Starship Troopers. Yes, I'm a geek. Give me your thoughts on Carl's male epiphany phase. I have to, I think that I agree with them, but I would say that when I'm talking about midlife crises, like I was talking about 2 weeks ago with Pat Campbell, that's really what I think of as a male epiphany phase. Now, what I think you're talking about is just what I was saying a minute ago. Is at what point do you decide that you don't want to spin plates anymore and you want to get with this perfect girl who's just great? If you are saying, I think she's the one, she's not the one, keep spinning plates. Keep go, because you haven't learned that there is no one. You haven't learned that there is no soulmate. So if your epiphany is, I found the one. No, you did not find the one. You found a good one, maybe. And maybe that's somebody you click with, maybe somebody that you could have a life with. But if you still believe in the soulmate myth, if you still believe in one-itis, that is debilitating, and it will eventually, once you get into that long-term relationship and you think of your wife in those terms, you are owned. You will be owned, and not because she owns you, but she owns you in here. She owns you because you have made her into something that is owning you, whether or not she really wants to or not. So think about it in those terms. So is there a male? Yeah, okay. Is there a point at which guys say, you know what, I'm not going to spin plates anymore, and I want to, I just want to be involved in a long-term relationship? Sure. In fact, I tell guys this all the time. I said, don't consider monogamy until you're about 30 years old, and then have a girlfriend. Don't get married. Just have a girlfriend. Because if you've been playing the field and if you've been spinning plates through most of your 20s, and you've been maximizing yourself, because remember, it takes longer for guys to mature, and it takes longer for guys to build themselves up into their optimal potential. Hopefully you have been listening to what I've said and what a lot of other men have said, and making the most of your potential throughout your 20s and in through at least half of your 30s. And then think about it, and then decide, hey, you know what? right about now. I don't want to be. I really worry about guys. Like I gotta give you an example. I worry about my cousin. My cousin is good looking guy, lot of potential, maximized it. Architect, famous architect, I should say. I'm not going to say who he is. Makes a lot of money. Came from a lot of money. My uncle was pretty set. Um, and got married later in life. Got married, I think, right around 38 years old, and held off from having kids. And he is about my age. I think, yeah, he's in his 50s. He's early 50s, and his oldest child, I think, is 8 years old. And so to me, that's kind of weird because I'm done. Like my daughter's 21 years old, and I we had her when I was 30 years old, and that's in and I'm done, right? She's out. She's one more year of college, and I don't know what she's going to do. Hopefully great things. But like to me, just the idea of having to go through like raising a kid at, I mean, and granted, he's married, his wife doesn't have to work or anything like that. So a lot of that stuff is taken care of for him. So he's not, I mean, he gets to go to the, high school or the school recitals and, little league games and things like that. I'm sure he enjoys all that. But that's kind of weird to me. It seems like that might be a little late in life. Like you be in your mid 40s and you have a kid. Now, guys can do that. Women can't do that because it's harder on their bodies. Women need to have children in their 20s. Simple as that. Sorry, ladies. That's a biological fact. You need to have your children earlier. That's your fertility window. There is no biological. If women had a biological clock, it would be like right around 22 years old, because that's when you're at your peak potential to actually have children. Right around there, 19 through 24, somewhere in there. That's your fertility window for sure. You wonder why guys always fixate on those ages as women's sexual market value peak. That's why, because that's your fertility peak. So here's the thing: is male epiphany phase. Hopefully I'm getting this right. If I'm not getting this right, you can let me know. It's that point at which guys decide, hey, I'm done spinning plates. I'm done being non-exclusive. I think I found a girl that I would be good with. She's not the one. She's not my soulmate. I'm not getting one-itis for her. I'm thinking that she might be somebody that I can live with and be part of long term. Is there a point in a man's life? I think there is. I think a lot of guys are getting past that right now because women aren't ready to do that. Women are like too independent. Like I've always said this: men and women are better together than we are apart. We evolve to be complements to one another. Okay, got that? I'm not saying women are evil. I'm just saying men and women are different. Okay, we are not equals. We have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. And hopefully, if we are maximizing our strengths, we can offset the weaknesses in our partners. Okay, and that's I can show you the biological proof of that in just like brain scans, and there's too many ways in which we are complements to one another. And I honestly believe that men and women are better together than we are apart. But we live in a social order that says, men, you go over here, women, you go over here. You don't need no man, and I don't need no woman, right? And that's we segregate the sexes into either side of the room, and we never really come together to understand the other one. But if we do that, since we're living in a gynocentric social order, we're expected to do that on a woman's terms. So we call that equality. We call that egalitarianism. So it's okay if we come together and we all pretend that we're independent. I'm just me over here, and we're just these self-fulfilling autonomous things. Right? That's what we sell women. We sell women this idea that they are these that they're self-fulfilling, self-generating, self-perpetuating, self-satisfying things. They're not women. They don't have any needs. They don't need a man. We even tell them that. Women say that. I don't need no man. Right? Like that. Like that's a point of pride. It's like, no, you do. You actually do need a man. And you know what? A man needs a woman as well. There's nothing wrong with saying that, because that's the way we evolve. That's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be together. We're supposed to work together. We're supposed to be cooperative. That's how we get the next generation off into the next freaking, millennium. And hopefully we're teaching them something. We're supposed to be doing that. So yeah, is there a point at which we say, okay, well, we're gonna say, okay, we're not gonna spin plates anymore. We think we have enough experience with women. We say, okay, now it's time to look for one because we want to procreate. We want to reproduce. Okay, I would suggest that, and this is just the reality of our environment, our social environment right now. Our social environment says you need to have experience with, you've got to be, particularly as a guy, you have to have experience with women. You have to understand, if you're going to make the best choice once you get to that male epiphany phase, if you're going to make the best choice with figuring out who are you going to be with. Like, guys are just deathly afraid to get married right now. They're like, there's too much risk involved, and I get it. And that's one of the reasons why I will never advocate for marriage, even though I have a fantastic marriage, and I'm coming up next week I'll be 23 years, and I'll probably write a post about that, and it won't get too sappy, but I'm going to write a post about that, because I've got what a lot of guys would consider an ideal marriage. I have an ideal family, even though it's a small one. And a lot of people want to know, how do I get what I want, what you have? I have had so many guys, and not just guys in the manosphere. I've had guys just like, I know, like they'll hit me up and say, I want what you have. I wish I had what you had. And I wish I could tell them, oh, well, here you go, man. Here's the bullet point check. Here's what you do to get what I have. I wish I could do that, but I can't, because I'm me and you're you. And that's why I don't give prescriptions. I can point you in the right direction. I can tell you what to expect. I can tell you how to go about, like, the process of vetting, but how you vet is really up to you, because I'm not you. I don't live in your shoes. I don't live in your body. I don't live in your community. I don't live in your country, probably. So is there a point where you decide you're done? Sure. I think for a lot of guys there is, because there kind of has to be. And that epiphany phase is for men. I don't even really call it epiphany phase. I think it's just sort of that transition from spinning plates to being in a singular relationship. I think there's some things that men need to have before they get to that. They need to have some experience with women, first of all. We say, well, average. See, this is where I part ways with a lot of people who believe in premarital sex. I don't, like, 98% of couples had sex before they got married. Let's just be honest. Why? Okay, so if that's the general truth, let's work within the parameters of the general truth. I understand why people will talk about premarital sex, and I think it's a good idea. And I do. I think it's a great idea. I think in practice it's untenable, but I think it's a great idea. Why? Because it limits women's pool of men that they can fixate on. If you've only ever had sex with one guy, I mean, you can still be an alpha widow. You can just fantasize about Jason Momoa or Chris Hemsworth or whatever. You can still have an alpha widow who's been a virgin, right? Who only has ever had sex with you. She can still, oh, I really wish I could get that guy over there. You could still have that no matter what. But the thing is like, if you don't believe in sex before marriage, the likelihood, let's just say, of a woman being an alpha widow or fixating on, like what Sheryl Sandberg says. Think about it this way: like Sheryl Sandberg says, have fun, have sex with the bad boys and the commitment phobic boys, and then, like, when you get to be 30 years old, or right before the casino closes, get off the carousel and find that nice guy who wants to be an equal partner. Right, that's the plan. That's the Sandberg plan for hypergamy: is bang all the bad boys in your 20s and hope that Poindexter, who learned to code, is going to be right there waiting for you when you hit 30 years old and you can't get those guys anymore. That's the plan. Well, that's the natural plan. That seems the most logical to women, because that's what unleashed, unfettered hypergamy looks like to women. When women are independent of men, that's what they do. They do Sheryl Sandberg's plan for hypergamy. They bang the bad boys and they get off the carousel right at the last minute. Hopefully, it's what Dellert calls it. This, he says, they got to stick the landing, and that's what this is. Like, they think that at the end of, like, by the time they get to their epiphany phase, right around 29 years old, that they're going to stick the landing. That they're going to get with a guy who learned to code, and he's made the most of himself, and he's ready to settle down. And he's in his epiphany phase, right? And he's ready to settle down. Now imagine this. Imagine that the religious elders of days gone by realized this, that if we unfetter hypergamy, that's where we're going to go. So what do we have to tell our youth? Don't have sex before you're married, because it's going to avoid all of the crap that goes along with the Sheryl Sandberg plan for hypergamy, because they understood the nature of women, and they used to understand the nature of women, and they used to understand the nature of men. Now, most guys, we're talking about 2 or 3 generations where we've kind of thrown all that out the window since the sexual revolution. So is it tenable? No. Is it a good idea? Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. So why is it a fantastic idea? So women don't, like, when I talk about like alpha widows, I don't know if anybody knows what an alpha widow is. An alpha widow is a woman who's had, like, say she's had 10 lovers in her past. One of those guys, maybe 2 of those guys, made an alpha impact on her. So she'll be married to the guy that, who was ready to be the equal partner, right? When she was 29 years old. Well, she's thinking back, I was so crazy in my party days, and there's this one guy, and I remember this one time in Cancun, and this foam cannon party, and I had sex with him. Oh man, it was so great. I wish we could have done. I wish he was the one that got away. The one that got away. When the guys are, I pick on guys when it comes to soulmate myth and one-itis. Women are every bit soulmate mythers as well, and it's usually the one that got away. There's a Katy Perry song and a Katy Perry video that is like the most, it's sick in a sense, but like it's the most red pill video you will see, because it outlines hypergamy so perfectly. And certainly the alpha widow, because here's this girl singing about her ex-boyfriend, her ex-lover, who actually in this case dies, but who is literally a widow. So she's literally a widow. She marries the rich beta guy who takes care of her every need, but she's not in love with him. She's in love with the artist and the emo kid who wrote her poetry and was goth and had that, he was cute and he kind of had abs and blue eyes, and she thinks about him until the day she dies. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, you get enough of those guys, that's the alpha widow. That's the woman who you think you've married this girl and she's really into you, and she's really just like, she's with you because she couldn't, you would do at the time, but she's really thinking about Johnny who drove off the cliff in his 57 Chevy. So anyways, let's move on. Johnny Vegas, once again, is it healthy for your son to watch his father spin long-term plates? Well, why? If you are, well, I don't know. It depends. What is your situation with your son? What is your situation with your, I would presume, ex-wife, or you're the mother of your son? Is it healthy for him to watch his father spin plates in the long term? Well, in the long, how long is the long term? How old are you? How old is your son? If your son is, I think that there needs to be, I think young men, let's just say teenage guys, need to understand the wisdom of spinning plates. They need to understand the wisdom of non-exclusivity. Remember, okay, one of the reasons why boy, this is like the spinning plates issue or episode here. One of the reasons why I say this is because when you are non-exclusive, it does so many different things for you. It helps you in so many different ways. The main way it helps you is that you don't fixate on one girl, and you don't have one-itis, or you don't have an unhealthy fixation on a girl. You thinking here, oh, she's my soulmate, because Disney told me that she's my soulmate. So you don't have that unhealthy fixation. I think it's very important for teenagers to get that, because a lot of young men fall into that right now. So if you go and look at the school shooters today, they're all these, okay, most of them are on antidepressants. Let's get that out of the way. Yes, I understand that. Most of these guys don't have fathers, or they have, and that's the first thing that women will say, well, where's the father in all of this? So most of them don't have fathers. Most of them are white kids. Yes. Most of them have gone through some sort of trauma where a girl left them or rejected them. And most of them will have their, when they have an emotional outburst, they express themselves emotionally with an AK-47. That's what they're doing. They have an emotional outburst with a gun. And because they've not been taught to control their emotions, they've been taught to express those emotions. They've been taught to, that any kind of acting out, any kind of emotional expression is good, because they've only ever had female teachers, and that's all that they've ever been taught, is that that's what they should do. And so what happens is, if they were if they had a father that taught them, here's how you deal with rejection, here's how you snap back from that. Like most guys who will kill themselves because they've been zeroed out, that's really tough because you're taking away all this equity that they built into their lives for a very long time, and they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to rebuild. They don't know how to come back from zero again. Well, where does that begin? That begins when you're a kid. You have to be resilient. You do, like most kids today, most men, most young men are not taught resilience. They're not taught how to come back because they don't have a father in the house. And even their fathers, they couldn't teach them anyways because they were taught by beta fathers themselves. So they never got that lesson either. So, well, it's okay. Just sit down in our little therapy group and we'll just talk about our feelings. No, you don't do that. You need to teach them how to come back from that. I would say, a lot of guys will say, well, you should just join the military because if you join the military, then they'll teach you resilience and they'll teach you to be tough. I don't know. I think maybe some of the military guys today will say, well, the military has become more feminized now. I mean, that's all I'm reading these days. We're going to put women in combat roles. Well, what are they going to do afterwards? Talk about their feelings? I don't know. So anyways, is it healthy for him to see his father spin plates long term? I think that would at least be an example of how to date non-exclusively. And most guys don't get that. Most guys never get that lesson because their fathers are beta and their fathers are still trying to figure shit out when it comes to women as it is. So is it healthy? Sure. I think so. Let's see. Rap Tracks Media. Okay, it's now we're at the 2-hour mark. I'm going to go through the rest of these real quick as fast as I can because we've been at this for 2 hours, and thank you guys for sticking with me for so long. Look at that. Please hit the like button. I'm almost up to 200 likes already and no downvotes. That's awesome. Here we go. Rap Tracks Media. How to recover from nice guy syndrome relating to interacting with old friend group. Will my old friends ever change their mental model of me, or do I have to cut them off forever? I am 23 years old. I would presume that English is your second language. Here's the deal. You should go read 48 Laws of Power. And then I believe it's there's a law in there. I don't know which one. I think it's in the 20s. Don't accept the roles that society puts on you. You decide who you are. This is one reason why I have a real tough time with guys giving me this bullshit about Myers-Briggs and you're an INTJ or whatever the fuck you are. Okay, no, you're who you say you are, and people want to keep you in these categories. Human beings need predictability. Because the world is a very chaotic place, and particularly when you have men with female ideals, or men who are taught in female education, they look for security because that's what women look for. Women look for security in a chaotic world, and they look to men, dominant men who are taller than them, for security in a chaotic world. Okay, and that's what your friends want from you. Technically, that's what they want from you. That's why we look to things that are like sort of outside the realm of reality, because we think that there's some sort of security in God. We think there's some security in astrology. We think we're going to find, like, if we can just figure out how to get the universe to give us what we want, like The Secret, if we just put enough positive juju out into the universe, then it'll come back to me, and then I'll have security, right? Because then I'll have $1 million and nobody can touch me. I'll be great. Right? That's what we want. We want security in a chaotic world. And so what we do as human beings is we try to categorize things. And that's why I always reject this idea that you can categorize personality types of men or of people, really. I'm saying women too, because you change. Who I am at this time in my life is not who I was when I was 10 years, like when I was 40, when I was 30, when I was 20. I mean, shit, even like 3 years from now, I won't be the same person, because who knows what's going to happen between now and then. And people say, well, you can't change your personality. It's always part of who you are. No, personality is not static. And if you know anything about personality studies, you will understand why this is. If you go and you talk to a guy who goes out on combat deployment and he comes back with PTSD, he is not the same person who went out before deployment. Okay. So yes, there are unfortunately, usually this happens through trauma. There's other ways that you can change your personality. Obviously, I think people don't realize the subtle changes that are happening in their personality, and that's why when they get to be like 3 years later, suddenly their wife says, "You're not the man I married." You're damn right, I'm not the man. God forbid I'm the man you married 4 years ago or 5 years ago, or whatever, because that means I'm changing. That means it's better to be, what do they tell you? They tell you always to compare yourself not to the other guy, but to who you were like yesterday or a year before. Right. So this is what I'm talking about here. It's like, can you recover from nice guy syndrome? Well, are you a nice guy? Are you going to change something about yourself? Here's the thing is you have this old friend, and I understand what you're saying, because I've had guys give me this example before. And what they will do is like, they'll be in high school and okay, so he says he's 23 years old right now. Okay, let's just say you're 17 years old and you have a group of friends in high school, and suddenly you graduate from high school and everybody goes their separate ways. And they have this, like, all your friends from high school have this impression of you. God, he's a pussy, right? Oh, well, he's a nice guy. I really like him. He'll hope he goes far. And then the dude goes off and he's away from his friends. Maybe he goes to the military. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Or he leaves the country. Or he goes and does something. He actually makes something of himself. He comes back, and now he's 23 years old, and he comes back to that old group of friends, and he's not the same guy anymore. Right? That's remember the maybe you remember this, but there used to be a thing called a high school reunion, and usually we used to do those so that we could figure out like who had actually some value to them and who actually was going places and had some ambition. And usually it's guys who like will go and they'll rent a Lamborghini, right? Or they'll dress up nice and pretend like they've got like a 6-figure job so they can impress the old girls that never gave them the time of day when they were in high school. We don't need to do that anymore because we have the internet and we have Facebook, and we can see in real time just how much of bullshitter you are or not. And so what changed? Like, so you went off on deployment, you came back, and now you're 23 years old, and your friends come back and they go, "Man, you're not the same guy anymore. You're different." And girls, like, assuming you alphaed up a little bit, and suddenly you're a little bit more, you're different. Like, people will always tell you, stop being somebody you're not, man. Well, who's telling you that? The people who want you to be predictable, the people who want you to stay in the mold and to stay in your lane, right? They want you to stay who you are, because that is security in a chaotic world. That's why like I was telling that one guy before, when I was telling about the reconstruction, when you're predictable, you're boring. When you're predictable, you're controllable. And that's why people don't want you to change, because they can't control you then, because you're not an INTJ, you're a EFI5 or whatever. You become something else. You've defied their categorization of you. You don't fit the archetype that they were hoping you were going to stay. They want you to stay that. They want you to stay there because it gives them a sense of control. And again, in a chaotic world, and you're somebody that they can, and maybe that's a good thing in some cases. Maybe they want you to be that dependable guy who's always going to be there for them and that shoulder to cry on, but that doesn't get you anywhere. Maybe you don't want to be a nice guy anymore. Maybe you want to actually make yourself your mental point of origin and do something with your life. So bear that in mind. Yes, you can get out of that, but here's the thing. You decide who you're going to be. You decide, you give yourself permission to be whoever the hell you want to be. And maybe they don't believe that. Maybe they'll say, well, you're being somebody you're not. Okay, fine. But I guarantee you, if you go and you take that attitude and you say, okay, I'm going to be this, and then you take that to the next town over and you start a new social circle of friends, they don't know any different. They didn't grow up with you. They don't have any preconceptions of you. You be who the hell you want. That's why guys go online. That's why the internet's so great, right? Everybody is who the hell they say they are. We don't even take, why did I take Roll Tomasi as my name? Well, why do we have moniker? There's guys, of course, there's guys that use their real names, of course, but like, why in the first place do people do they want anonymity online? Well, so that you're judged on your ideas, not necessarily on who you are. That's changing, I think, right now. I think a lot of guys are sort of coming clean, and it's not as big a deal anymore, because I think everybody's realizing that we really don't have any such thing as privacy anymore. But we are who we say we are, and that don't be the person, if that's what you want. Don't be the person that you think is expected of you. And don't think that you can't make a genuine change. You can make a genuine change. Let's see. Bunny Marie, do you have advice for a young couple that's reading your books and growing into the red pill community? Read them all. A young couple. If I get your meaning right, and since I'm presuming that you're female here and you're reading my books, understand that like this is when I was writing, it was mainly for guys, and like I said, I think it was in the second book. It was a situation between a guy and his girlfriend who picked up my first book and read my book, and she comes back to him a week later and she goes, "Everything in this book is true, and you shouldn't know any of it." Don't cop that attitude. There's your advice right there. Understand that if you're better off knowing this and working within the parameters of red pill awareness than you are to go into denial, and to understand that just because something is unflattering to the feminine doesn't mean that there's other things that are flattering to the feminine. So people think that well, Rollo all he does is badmouth women all the time. No, I don't. I just reveal objective truths about women, and sometimes they're unflattering. And because we live in a feminine primary social order, if I say something like that, or if I'm in any way like marginally critical, then I'm a misogynist. Oh, he hates women. I can't believe him. Oh my gosh, girls, come over here to join my mailing list. So remember that I'm in all my work, I try to be as objective as possible. I had like 2 weeks ago, I had a post called Believers versus Empiricists. Go read that. Try to be a person who is founded in objective reason. And then I'm not saying you have to be some like, Mr. Spock. I'm not saying you have to be emotionless. I'm not even saying that I don't want you to kill your artistic soul or anything like that. You still need, I still think that, and when I'm writing the fourth book on religion right now, the one thing that I have learned, here's the things I've learned from writing that. One of the greatest thing I've learned about writing about religion from a red pill perspective is that human beings have a need to believe. And we have there's some innate part of, maybe it's part of our brains or whatever, or maybe it's our evolved past. I'm sort of still kind of working through this, but I think that there is an evolved part of our nature, our human nature, not just men and women, our human nature to want to give credence to the metaphysical, to give credence to something that's beyond our knowing. And that's what the metaphysical is: above, beyond, outside the physical, metaphysical. And I'm of the opinion that people say, well, do you believe in God? Yes, I do believe in God. And the reason I believe in God is because I can't rule out that there could never be such a thing, because we only have so many ways. And I realize this isn't your question, but there's only so many ways we can experience our reality. Like we have 5 senses, right? So maybe there's some form of energy. Like we can hear things, we can see light, we can hear sounds, we can taste tastes, we can feel feels, we can do whatever, right? So we have all these senses, but maybe there's forms of energy that are going on around us that we just simply don't have an organ in our physical bodies to experience that particular energy. So if that's the case, like this is the example I give is like when, and people will call me the carpet on this, I'm sure, in the comments, but one of the examples that I give is that when we didn't know what infrared was or ultra green or any of that kind of like the visible spectrums were for a very long time until we figured it out. Right? You can't see, or like another good one is so you can't see that it's invisible to you, but we have ways of enhancing our senses so that we can see that. Didn't mean that those wavelengths of light didn't exist. It's just we couldn't see them. Same thing for like dog whistles, right? You can blow the whistle, you don't hear anything, but the dog's like, because it can hear that. It has a different sensitivity. It can smell smells that and we figured that out. Oh, dog's a bloodhound, right? He can smell smells. Why can't we do that? Well, because we lack the facilities for that. Then those are just the senses that we know. Maybe there's some other things that's going on around us that we just don't have the capacity to experience. So that's my long-winded way of saying that I think that there's a part of our, and I don't want to give away the book too much because I go into this in a few chapters, but I do think that we have a need to want we want to believe. Okay. So that did not answer your question whatsoever, but I think that you need, if you're a couple, read it from the perspective that you're not, don't take offense to anything. Like, I think there's a faction of red pill guys who think that just because what I wrote, it means that I'm agreeing with them, and I'm agreeing with their idea that women are evil. Oh, and here, look, Rollo said they're evil, and he said women can't love men. No, I didn't. I've never said anything like that. I said that women cannot love men in the way that men believe that they're capable of loving them. Well, that's not real love. No, that's the way they experience love. You can fall in love with a woman, and men have been doing it for a very long time now. Like, you can do it too. You just resist it. But so what they do is they take me out of context, and they think that I'm agreeing with them. And they, oh, look, Rollo agrees with me. No, you're just twisting. Well, you just found you found a passage in the rational male that agrees with what you believe. That's why I always say we need to keep the red pill apolitical, a-religious, asocial, a-racial, and focus in on intersectional dynamics and understanding the nuts and bolts of things. Oh, you can't do that without belief. Well, okay, read book 4, and we'll discuss that. We'll get into that later. But now, when you're reading my books, look at them from an empirical perspective, an objective perspective. And anything else? Redman Anon. Hello, brother. If you have a weird last name, like Tomasi, yet you are a great catch, and she has a nice sounding one, does it make sense for her to take your last name? If not, it looks bad on you. If she makes, okay, well, okay, here's the deal, dude. Okay, I understand what you're getting at. You're trying to say, oh, well, is it bad for you to take your woman's last name? Yes. Well, let's look at that. And you know what? I'm gonna end on this one. Okay. I like talking about this one, as you probably know. Notice how I get into this a little bit more as we go. So here's the deal. When it comes to last names, and I have got into the worst Twitter battle fights with women about this, especially like very self-entitled women who want nothing more than to, like, exert their dominance over men. They will say to me this. I will say, I've said this before. I said, if a woman won't take your last name, don't marry her. And women are like, wow, what do you mean? What if he has a crummy last name? What if his last name is Butts? Okay, fine. You have to understand that when women resist taking the surname of a man, they believe, most women, most feminist women will tell you this, that they don't believe in those old patriarchal traditions. Because it used to be, if you took a man's last name, it meant that you belonged to his tribe or his clan, or you were his property. And I'm not going to be his property. I don't want to be Mrs. Tomasi. I want to be Mrs. Smith hyphen Tomasi. We'll do it that way. Or I'm just going to keep my last name because I have a business practice and I'm a lawyer, and I'm an entertainer and I'm just going by Madonna, or I'm just going by, Lady Gaga. I'm not going to be Lady Gaga Tomasi. I'm going to be Lady Gaga. No, you're not. You're not that fucking important. Get over yourself. So that's the first part. But so when I say that, it's all based on ownership, right? Like, women think that if they take your last name, most militant feminists will tell other women that if you take his last name, that means he owns you. Well, you know what else is ownership? Is this right here? Is this ring, right? Because that is what when hell, when I was single, and if I was looking for a girl and I saw a wedding ring on her finger, I'm moving on to the next. I don't want to bother with some other guy's wife. That was a form of ownership, is to put that ring on there. I mean, that was really the ring. It turned into a dowry. Like, that's why you had to have the super expensive ring. It had to be like 4 months, according to Zales. It had to be 4 months worth of your salary had to be invested in that ring. And so maybe that's 10 grand. Well, that used to be the insurance. That was your insurance policy. So if you gave a woman a ring for $10,000 and then you reneged and you said, no, really, I don't want to marry you, you kept the ring, and that was $10,000. So now you have a dowry, and you can go buy land and some sheep, and you would still be okay when the next guy comes around a courting, right? That was the whole thing. Was there was that sense of like, if you wear my ring, that means that you are exclusive with me. That we can get into the mechanics of marriage and how it is meant to enforce male paternity, but we'll talk about that later. We're talking about last names here. So there's that sense of ownership. You become part of that clan. So if a woman is saying that, if that's the first thing out of her mouth when you say, hey, will you marry me? Sure, I'll marry you. I'm going to be Susie Smith. No, you're going to be Susie Tomasi. No, I'm going to be Susie Smith. I'm going to keep my last name. Was she saying that? She's not into, she does, the genuine desire she has for you is negligible. It's the same thing when I was talking about a woman making you wait for sex, right? If she's making you wait for sex, there's some mitigating factor that will make that sex not worth the wait. That means that she's biding her time. She's hoping she's going to have some better option. If a woman is not taking your last name, what that says to me anyways is, from a red pill perspective, what that says to me is that she's hedging her bets. She doesn't see you as the alpha that she wants to spend the rest of her life with. You know what? Okay, you're gonna keep your last name. What's the last name of the kid's gonna be? Is it gonna be mine? Well, now we're talking about a paternity issue. Now I need to know that those kids are actually mine. Well, they don't have your last name. Yeah, well, that's my biology. Yeah, but they don't have your last name. They're not part of your family. So what that is not women not taking the last name of their husbands is, first of all, it's an attack on the family. And then second of all, it is an indication that a woman is not as into you as you would like her to be. So that's genuine desire. If a woman has genuine desire, remember what we were talking about before, behavior and motivation. The behavior is, I'm not going to take your last name. Okay, what's the motivation for that? The motivation for that is, I'm hedging my bets because I don't know that you are the alpha that I would really want to share a last name with or belong to you. Because remember, women will break rules for alphas and they will make rules for betas. Here's your rule. Your rule is this: I'll marry you, but I'm keeping my last name. Well, if you were that into it, if a woman is the hell yes girl, if a woman is like, hell yes, I'll marry you, hell yes, I'll go out there, hell yes, I want to have your babies. I forget who was the celebrity. There was some celebrity chick, and I think she got with like a sports star, and I wish I remembered the names of these guys, and somebody will come up with this, but she decided like she didn't want to have any kids. She never wanted to have any babies. And then like she married the sports star, and she was so into this guy. She's like, I didn't want to have babies, but I want his babies. And I want his name, and I want to be his woman. Right. So suddenly you have this woman who is like this really strong, independent woman who was going to, just take on the world. And she's this, autonomous entity. And now she wants to be the possession of a worthy man. She wants to be that position. So if a woman is that into you, she's never even going to that's never going to be a discussion. Woman's never going to bring that up. She's going to say, okay, I'm going to marry you, and my name is going to be Tomasi. Here, I'm going to go down to the courthouse, and I'm going to do the paperwork right now because I am so into you that I want your last name. And that is I won't say that's a good litmus test, but it's a litmus test is what it is, to determine genuine interest, is genuine desire of that woman. Is she that into you? Is she so into you that she will take your last name? Is she so okay? It's funny, is all these women who say, I'm never going to take his last name. Well, you'll take his ring. Well, yeah, I'll take his ring. I want to show it off to my girlfriends. Okay, but you don't want his last name. Why? Because you're interested in because all your marriage is based on his opportunism. You don't want him. You don't want to have it. You don't have his babies. You're going to go and fight with him about his last name, but you're going to still take his ring. Well, then why get married at all? Why not you just go over there? We live in separate houses. We'll just keep dating. Let's keep banging, and that's it. Maybe if a kid comes out of it, then I'll be the father and whatever, if that's the case, if that's where you want to go with it, if you don't want to go that, if I'm not worth it to you, why would I want to marry you? If you're not going to take my last name, why would I want to marry you? Because that's an indication that you don't have genuine desire. You don't have the degree of desire to want me, to want that. So that's how I approach the whole last name thing. Is it's based on women don't want to be owned, but they do. They just want to be owned by a worthy guy, the guy whose babies they're happy to have, that they want. They're like, they can't wait to have that. They can't wait for that baby to jump out of their womb. There it is. Finally got this guy's baby. That's what you want. You want the hell yes girl, and hell yes means hell yes, I'll take your name. Hell yes, I want your babies. Hell yes, I love your mom. You know, I love your dad. I love, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's what you want. So anyways, I have gone way, way over. We are at 2 hours and 23 minutes. I'm hoping you guys have got a lot out of this. We have really good viewership on this too. Thank you guys so much. 244 likes. Please hit the like button if you haven't already, although that is pretty good. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, remember I do a show every Sunday. It is called The Rational Male 101. I kind of do I do stuff on there with Pat Campbell. That's my Sunday show with Pat. We usually go for an hour and a half, sometimes two. And we talk about current events, but we also go into sort of more remedial stuff. So, Mary, what's your name? You watch that one, because I go into a lot of the old school stuff. I did that. I started that because I didn't want people to think that I was just like abandoning my first book, because everybody will pick up my first book because that's the one that really saves their lives, and that's the one that everybody talks about, and that's the Bible of the red pill. That's the Bible of the manosphere right now, and that's the living text. Like, people keep coming back to that, and people keep coming into that. And please, if you haven't done so already, pick up a copy of the print. I make the least amount of money on the print, the royalties, but that's the most important one. And it's important because I want you guys to share that with other people. I want you, if you read it and it changed your life, I want you to hand that to the next dude who you think needs it, and go, dude, read this. You need this right now. And then hopefully you have another copy for yourself that you have with your liner notes and your highlighting. But it's a living text. You'll keep coming back to it. It's not a book that you read and you just put on your shelf when you're done with it. You keep coming back to it. Every guy whose book I've ever signed, it has been dog-eared, and it looks like an old textbook. So pick that up. If you haven't, what really helps me out, if you want to help out my, thank you for everybody for the super chats. That helps me out a lot, because I'm only like partially monetized here. Usually I get demonetized or partially, like I get the yellow flag for most of my videos. So I still get them monetized, but they're not great. If you want to help me out, you can help me out. If you want to make a donation, you can go through my crypto. You can go through PayPal. You can go through whatever. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Leave me a good review on Amazon for any of the 3 of my books. It would be great. That helps me out a lot. And then also, the best way to help me out is to copy and paste the URL of this video and put it in your Twitter feed, or put it on your blog, or put it somewhere else. If you got anything out of this, or if you want to clip out little pieces of this, you have my permission. Please do. If there's something on here that I talked about, I'm giving everybody blanket permission. You can copy and use this for whatever you want to. Again, I do this because I want to answer questions. I want to help you guys out. So that is it. Also, I should say Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. That's Red Pill. Excuse me, Red Pill. It's The Rational Male 101. That's me and Pat Campbell. On Fridays at 9:05 Eastern on AM 1170, which is in Tulsa, where Tulsa comes to talk. That I do a morning show with Pat for 1 hour on Friday mornings at 9:05 Eastern. If you were looking for the link for that, just look at my Twitter feed, or look at Pat Campbell's Twitter feed. You can find his links in the description as well. And I am doing Rule Zero, which is a sort of a pass around show that we're doing kind of casually right now between me and Ryan Stone and Carl from Black Label Logic, and Jonathan, and also Rich Cooper, who is going to be hosting. So if you are a fan of mine, please subscribe to them as well. Subscribe to Rich so that you'll get the alerts and you'll know what we're going to be talking about. And it's going to get lively on this one, because we're going to talk about standards. We're going to talk about how men can't have standards and women do get standards, and why that is. And his most recent viral tweet that's gone crazy right now. So be there for that. And again, like I said, if you really want to help me, the easiest way to do that is just to give me a good review on Amazon. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. We're going to do this bi-weekly now. All right. Bye-bye.